Hello, good evening and welcome, I hope. It's not been too bad tonight. We always start pondering what mood YouTube's in, but seemingly in a good one. So if you're in the chat, say hello, good evening, Roger. Excellent, excellent. We have people. That's fantastic. We have people. That's always a good start, isn't it? How is everybody? It's been a bit of a mixed week weather-wise, hasn't it? It's been raining here all day. Still boiling hot, sadly, but cooling down, I'm hoping. Sunny Seattle. I'm hoping you've got it sunnier than we have. It's been raining here, but we did have the hottest day on record on Thursday, and I can vouch for the fact it was, and I did not enjoy it in the slightest. I am not a hot weather girl. I am more a snow and ice, wished I live in Iceland girl. So it was horrific for me. But you see, the thing here is, when we went on holiday down to Brighton, it was fabulous. It was really warm, but there was a nice breeze. It wasn't humid. Manchester, we don't do warm. We do agonisingly humid. And that's what happened on Thursday. Hello, Marshall. Oh, raining in Florida. I never thought I'd see the day. Always fancied visiting Florida, you know. I think it was the crocodiles that put me off. But Mum fancied Florida. Isn't that where one of the Disney things is? She really fancied that. I think the crocodiles put her off as well. She wasn't one for nature, wasn't my mother. So we've done the weather. Weather's not good. But we do have some photos of where we've been this week, and the weather was worth seeing. What else have we got? Johnny! Hello, Johnny I. Ready yesterday until you got the date wrong. That's because we were invited out. And we've got photos of that as well. So we'll be starting with that in a couple of minutes. But we did say. Liquid sunshine. That's what we've had. The rain's coming down and the rain is actually warm. In fact, I always drink water. I don't drink anything but water. And I have 2-litre bottles of water from the supermarket. And normally they're okay on their own. This week it was like, can you get me some ice and can you put that in the fridge? And then we ended up putting 2-litre bottles in the freezer and then bringing them out, absolutely solid ice. And they were defrosted within 10 minutes. So we ended up bringing a freezer bag up to the office and leaving the 2-litre bottles of water in there. As you can hear, water. But it's all very lukewarm and yucky at the moment. I don't mind it warmish as long as it's not humid. But it's been humid, so it's been horrible. Horrible, horrible. I always think, if you want good weather, go on holiday. If you are like me and you would rather be cool, just stay in Manchester. But that didn't work this week. Good evening, Graham. Okay, I need to get my slides up so you know what we've got coming up. So first of all, I will pass over to my desktop. There is my desktop. And then we have my running order. And we got lots tonight, including a bit of a Jeopardy demo. A Jeopardy demo means, I haven't done it before. It means I'm doing something live. And this is indeed something live. So we'll wrap up with that one in case it all goes parts of your anatomy over other parts of your anatomy. But this is what we've got. So I got requests for people who only use Affinity Photo on an iPad, and they wanted to do the frequency separation thing. And it seemed to be a little bit different to them. So I thought we'd go over that. It's actually very nice doing it on an iPad because you do have the Apple Pencil to go at. So it's far more intimate in terms of working with the image. But of course, I'll struggle with that because I'm trying to show you my iPad as well as everything else during the demo. So we'll see how that goes. Then we've got that app that I talked about last week, which is only 99 pence. It's for iOS, it's for iPhone and iPad. And what it's supposed to do is give you a limitless whiteboard. Now, Mike's had a look at it. I've had a look at it. Good evening, Peter. We both said the same. A little bit on the primitive side, but if it does the job. So that's what we're having a look at. Now, who uses Pixelmator or Pixelmator Pro? Let me know in the chat. Pixelmator Pro got a big update this week, the Hummingbird update. So I thought we'd have a look at what was new with that. Then we've got the Freebies. the usual freebies and extra freebies. Then we've got our comic creation kit, part 2. We're moving on to look at colour. Then there's the demo, the untried demo, which is web-based photo galleries. So if you are attempting to showcase your photos, create a gallery of your images, this could be the demo for you. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to be attempting to create a gallery of quite a few images, but the object of the demo is to show you how easy that can actually be. Of course, not having done it, because if I'd have done it then I couldn't redo it because it's live on the web. It's all without the aid of a safety net, which I know is how you like our demos. But without further ado, now Graham's a Pixelmator user. Excellent, we do have a Pixelmator demo. The week at MacBites headquarters. It's been warm, I would say. But apart from that, we've had a good week, haven't we?
We have.
Started on Saturday, not quite so good. No, emergency. Now don't panic, it wasn't medical. No. I faced this. That's the back of my iMac in the studio. That's acoustic curtaining that you see, and all those spots, that's dust. I'm not joking either. Yes, I needed to put in an extra hard drive. As you can see, they should be labelled. One's got a post-it note on. That was the emergency one. But I'd run out of USB ports and I didn't have a hub. So I installed one that you can just about see there that I use for my laptop. That one there. Obviously, that gave me a problem with all the rest of the stuff. So I needed something. As it says there, you purchased this on the 20th of July. I did. I ordered it on Saturday for delivery on Sunday. Nice looking piece of kit, I thought. Have had one or more of those before. What could possibly go wrong? It was dispatched. Usually at that point, you're okay. Sunday arrived. Out for delivery, they said. DPD. Why? Now you're thinking DPD are fabulous. You love DPD. I do. I really do. But not when they need a signature on a Sunday and I'm out. Oh, it was a panic. Luckily, they managed to deliver it. They scheduled me in just after lunch. So it arrived. There's my toy. Now, what I did next was, you think it's simple, don't you? Go in and install it. How far wrong can you go? Well, the good news is, spoiler alert, there you go, it's installed. However, wasn't altogether that simple, as you might be able to tell from the USB device on the left there that's not actually plugged in. But what I decided to do, because Mike was out of the way, can't remember what he was doing, but I videoed the whole process, which got a lot more complicated than it needed to. I ended up with acres of cable I have from what I have no idea, and I did the whole thing. So next week, oh yes, next week, I will have that video edited for you so you could follow along with my hideous process of the emergency installation of the USB hub. So that was the weekend. Then Tuesday rolled round. Tuesday was, I would say, the beginning of the warm weather, wouldn't you? Yes. But it was all right. We were out at one of those posh doos. Denton Golf Club. Rather nice, isn't it? You'll see I do like my water. Wine glass in the middle, empty. Somebody's got beer there. That wasn't mine. But it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful night. That was our view as we were eating as the sun went down. It was one of the warmest days of the year. Once the sun had gone even further down, that was our view. It was absolutely gorgeous. So we had a fabulous night there. Then we came on to Friday. Now, Friday was obviously when we would be doing the after hours, but we'd been invited out. The weather was on the wane, as you can see. No blue sky there. We'd been invited to a local quiz. Now, the sharper-eyed amongst you might have spotted the bricked-up doorway. If you didn't, it's there. I did. Fear not, there was another way in. So we got in. Mike, no trouble finding the bar. None whatsoever. The quiz got going. That was the first round. You'll notice there's no number 11, so no one got 30. But we're pretty good at quizzes, aren't we, Mike? The first round went well. prizes. By round 3, we were well in the lead. And by the end, we were victorious. See, he's happy with his alcohol, isn't he? Not to worry, though, because we moved on from the quiz then. It was on to the raffle. Guess what? Another win. In fact, by the end of the evening, we weren't at all sure we'd ever be welcome back. But that was Friday night. There you go. Now, last week, in relation to something from last week, we've got a blast from the past. This week, Mike's got a link for this.
Peter wants to know, what's the hub for?
What's the hub? The hub was because I had an SSD in there, and I've got microphones plugged in because it's the studio, and I needed to take in an extra SSD. The reason I needed an extra SSD was the machine that's in there only has a 256 gig internal drive, which may have been all right in the day, but to be honest, it was a bit small even then, and certainly isn't now. If I do some audio recording and I do some screen recording with it, if I do sort of 40 minutes, it's full. So I decided I needed to install another SSD. And that was when I discovered I didn't actually have a free port. So that's what it was for. I do now have plenty of spare ports, but there are other things that are plugged in there. But you'll see all of that on the video. I promise. I've got, I discovered I had 2 extra mice plugged in that I had no idea about. This is the problem. If you ever do that, you plug stuff in and then you think, oh, I'm not using that anymore, but I'll just leave it where it is. And then you come and tidy up and you think, what is that actually? That's where I was at. So that's why. Anyway, this blast from the past was all to do with my foray into the kitchen last week when I went cake baking. Well, Mike mentioned that my last foray into the kitchen before that didn't end so well. And many of you were not with us back then. And I'm sure, Johnny, I think you were probably at school. I did a blog post about 10 years on a Mac, and that would have been in 2016. So it encompassed iPad Day in 2010. Now, when I say iPad Day, I mean iPad 1 Day. Well, this is what my office looked like on iPad 1 Day. I thought to myself, I'll have plenty of time to get ready, I thought. My iPad's due, but, I'll be up early. On the left there, we've got my 17-inch MacBook Pro. Loved that machine. Loved that machine. The iMac at the back is a 24-inch 2016 iMac. You can't see behind the cardboard box on the left, but if you look to the right, there are 3 hard drives. Well, I had 6 of them. There are 3 behind that box as well. Each one was a terabyte. So there was 6 terabytes hanging off that. And a USB 2 hub. Next to that, underneath it, you'll see an LG. That was a Blu-ray writer. Ah, those were the days. Discs. Anyway, said iPad arrived a little bit early. UPS man arrived. Unfortunately, as you can see from the mess, when he arrived, I was in the middle of cooking my breakfast, which was porridge. So this is why it was to do with last week and my foray into the kitchen. iPad arrived. I dived upstairs, made that amount of mess. There isn't even pencils there. It was way pre-pencil. But you can see at the bottom, at the front, just above the drawer handle on the left, where the plug is, next to it, it says 3. That's a 3G card because I had a 3G iPad 1. There's also camera cards and batteries and, there was a stand. It was that bad Mike didn't open his. And on the very, very top, that was the case for it. So that was the scene. Obviously, I dashed upstairs, ripped it open, got on with it. No problem at all. Only problem was, 4.5 hours later, I discovered breakfast. Yes, that is at 90 degrees to the floor. It had set like cement. But as I said last week, not a problem, Mum had a chisel. And we did actually manage to get it out. But no, it was inedible. This is why I am not allowed near the kitchen. But that was my side of iPad 1 back in 2010. I wasn't the only one who had trouble, was I, Mike?
Weren't you?
Oh, look at his little face, all innocent he is. Let me remind you. Mike's iPad, he'd booked Thursday off.
Oh, yeah, it arrived the wrong day.
He had arrived the wrong day. Yeah. You booked Friday off, hadn't you? But it arrived on Thursday, a day early. Now, if you're wondering what the red arrow is it all coming back to you now, Mike?
Well, it arrived a day early.
Apart from the fact it arrived a day early.
No, it's not coming back to me.
It will do in a minute. Oh, yes. My iPad was perfect. Mike's iPad, not perfect. Dead pixel. So.
That wasn't iPad 1.
It was. Oh, it was. Because iPad 2 was Liverpool. It was. It was right. iPad 1. So, not a problem, we thought. We'll head into town, we thought, and we'll get it exchanged, we thought. Which we did. 4 times. Yes, count the boxes. Because we'd ordered it online, we couldn't just swap it in store. What we had to do was buy another one and then send the first one back. So we bought a second one. Yes, so you can imagine the credit card straining at this point. It too had dead pixels. So that's us decamped in a local coffee bar with our Mi-Fi. Look at that in the middle. God, they were the days, weren't they?
I do remember now.
It's all coming back to you now.
I remember kicking it off with them.
Yes, you did. Because if you count the boxes there, we've got one at the back, one next to it, one in that bag, and one at the front. And we've got all these iPads trying to find a perfect one.
Now my eyes are that bad, I wouldn't know a dead pixel if I saw one.
I know, that's what I'm like, so now I don't bother looking. But back then I did, and I could spot one at 10 miles away. So that's what we were doing. And when Mike mentioned me being in the kitchen, all of that horror flooded back to me. So we always like to start the show with a really funny story. And that was, I think we had there was probably about 5 iPads on the credit card at that stage, trying to sort them all out. The only one that was okay is mine there, which is underneath the Mi-Fi in its little black case, which was, incidentally, we did this on MacBites, what was the worst product Apple ever released. And for me, it was the case for iPad 1. And that is what I had that in for its entire life. Once I got iPad 2, I put it in a different case and it became a totally different machine. But yes, that was Mike and his tale of the magically multiplying iPads. Okay, so next. We have frequency separation in Affinity Photo for iPad. This is going to be interesting. Where's my camera gone? Oh dear, it's fallen over. That's a good start, isn't it? So I'm going to have to share my iPad and you're going to have to see my iPad and all the rest of it. Now, if you were not with us when we looked at frequency separation, we covered it in great depth 2 weeks ago on the 12th of July. I don't intend to go over all of the theoretical side of it. I will briefly tell you what it is, but it will be brief. But if you want to see it, go back and find After Hours 31. You can find that on the MacBites site. Basically, it's a technique to soften the skin, but without degrading the skin texture. To do that, it works on 2 frequencies. There's the high frequencies and the low frequencies. The high frequencies have one part of the image in, the low frequencies have a different part of the image. They are the texture in the high frequencies and the colour in the low frequencies. So you can work on the skin texture completely independent from the skin tone. Now, last time when we did this on the desktop. We took the elephant there, and I took an image that was going to be as clear as day, I hoped, that I was changing the colour and not the texture, because I didn't want to lose the elephant's skin. I didn't want to muddy it and make it all blurred. I just wanted to lose the colour on his back. And that was what I did, by separating it out the frequencies and working on the colour. I then did a more subtle example with this young lady here. Beautiful to start with, but a few subtle changes. That was what I did. So, as I said, you can catch up on that in episode 31. But what I'm doing today is hopefully doing exactly the same demonstration on an iPad. That's the plan, anyway. So, let's get everything set up so you can see my iPad. And we'll see how that goes. I'll try Air Server. It's got a mind of its own most of the time. But it might be working. We'll have a look. I know the camera's covered. Give me a minute. Right, I am with iPad. I am about to attempt to share iPad with you. and then you will see my iPad. That's the plan. Oh, look, it's working. Fantastic. Now, AirServer's got a mind of its own, sadly. So I'll make it bigger, and then it will resize it as it thinks fit. That's usually what happens. But I also want to... There we go. Typical. I'm looking all over for it. Right, okay, so this is my iPad screen. We might not need you to actually look at the output of the camera. That's going to be an optional for you. I'll have to get it keyed up first. So you can see where my hand is. But I have it configured. Let's get this over here. There we go. That's not going to work at that angle, is it? Let me move some stuff so you can see things. That should be better. I could put it in front, but that's going to be really awkward. Let's see how it goes. It's really just so you can see where my hands are. Now I've got a camera right in front of me. Hello.
You've got a question.
I've got a question. I can't even see that from here. Okay. Any idea when Affinity Photo and Designer will be interchangeable on the iPad and the Mac?
That's the Mac.
Oh, what do you mean by that question? Give me a bit of a clue what you mean by that, interchangeable.
Probably the demos that you did where you could, what's it called? Thing they introduced. Smart Suite or something.
Oh, Studio Link.
Studio Link.
They're working on it. If you mean Studio Link, they're working on it, but it's going to, at a minimum, need one more time for them, and two, the support of iOS 13, I would have expected. So at least September time, but give them a little bit longer. Give them a little bit longer. But it is coming. That's the good news, it's coming. As is Affinity Publisher for iPad, can't get my hands on it fast enough. Right, so I'm stretching cables and all sorts here, but here's me, I am here. Right, let's have a look at Affinity Photo. I have been dabbling with the one that we did before. So if you've been with me before on these demos, you'll know exactly what you're looking at. There's samples and tutorials at the bottom, but the ones at the top are the ones that I've done live. So I did one of those Ingrid Bergman's, and then I did another one live. I've got the lady that we did last in there. So this one was the that I did on the desktop. So first thing to have a look at is on here. Let's toggle off the edits and let's zoom in. And that was the before, which we will be starting with completely. And when we'd done it on the desktop, that was the after. I think I went a little bit mad, to be honest. But, yeah, no, but I think she'd be happy. The idea is you don't want to leave people completely plastic. So I think that's pretty decent. But what can you achieve on an iPad? So my starting point for this is I need to open up the original file. So I have the original file somewhere in here, aged skin. And I'm pulling it down from the cloud completely. I am not attempting to work on the image in the cloud. Now, that's just my personal preference. I might decide to go out and all the rest of it and then think, I'm working on the live copy. I've got no internet. So I make a copy of it. Now, because of the way frequency separation works, your first step in here, and I would recommend you did this no matter what you were doing with an image, is to tap on the layers and have a look what you've actually got. Now in here you've got one background layer. Now just like the desktop, it is destructive. Frequency separation can be destructive. So if you want to be able to flick back and do a comparison like I've just done with what it looked like when you started, you're going to need to duplicate the layer before you go any further. So that's the first thing to think about. So we need to go over here and tap duplicate, and that gives us an extra layer. It's an exact copy of the first one. It's just that that one will be turned into a frequency separation layer, but the background one will be untouched. So we can toggle off and have a look what it looked like before. Now, if you've never looked at Affinity Photo for iPad, you do have personas in here in the same way that you have on the desktop. Your personas are along the top edge on the left. They start off with the main editing persona. The next one along is the selection persona. And given what we intend to do, it's a good idea to know where that is and how to use it to make selections. You also have other personas in here. You have that one, which is your liquify, and you have that one, which is your develop. You have that one, which is your tone map, which I'm hoping to get out of without actually doing anything. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And then you have your export persona. I absolutely love the export persona. Adore the thing. So that's the personas that you've got. Now, when it comes to doing frequency separation in here, you could do it the manual way. If you know exactly what you're doing, you've done it for years in Photoshop maybe, then carry on doing it the way you've done it. But if you're thinking, oh, there was lots of layers and I can't remember which was which, and the one on the desktop helped me, then this one can help you too, but you need to move around the interface a little bit more than you do on the desktop. So you've already achieved step 1. Step 1, open image. Step 1.1, duplicate that background layer. Now, if you've done work on this image already, you may have multiple layers. When it comes to frequency separation, you need a composite layer to work with. So I've duplicated it. I've got that single layer. That layer there, top one, is the one I will apply the frequency separation to. Now, just like the desktop version, frequency separation is a filter. So down the right-hand edge here, you have these tools. Now, it's not too bad on my desktop. You can see that on my desktop. If you look at the camera that's above my iPad and my pencil moving down, it's very, very tiny. You may not have noticed, but when Affinity Photo for iPad came out, it was not supported on the iPad mini. And people were up in arms. It wasn't supported because of Apple's rules. If it supported that, it had to support something else. And there was generally a load of fiddling around with rules. What's happened since then is the rules have changed and an iPad mini is capable of running it. But the problem with it was when they got it running on there, the interface was too big. So they've made the interface smaller. Thanks for that. Because I've got a 12.9 inch iPad sat next to me. This is an 11 inch I'm working on, but I do have the 12.9. And now the interface is that tiny, I can't see it. So the interface has shrunk. Don't think it's you. If you're missing it, it's not too bad with a pencil, but if you're using your finger, you could inadvertently tap the wrong thing because it's not you, it really has shrunk. Now, it's a filter. So over on the right-hand side, fifth one down is filters. Now, unlike when you're working on the desktop, you pretty much have to exchange one element of the interface here for another on the iPad. So I had my layers active, but when I go to filters, my layers disappear. That's not a problem. I can flick back to them when I need it. But in your filters, you have an alphabetical list of filters. You're about that apply image. She looks like a Smurf. So alphabetical, as I go down, I should find in here that I have emboss. I'm getting there. Here we go. Frequency separation under F. Handily very close to Gaussian blur. That's important because we might be needing that. So all you need to do to apply it is tap. Gives you a very similar interface to the one you would see on the desktop. So you have this split view where you can determine which half, so whether the high frequency or the low frequency, I would say try and balance them out, but you can see what's going on here. So if I go across, so I'm pulling it across, and you can see, so we'll set it similar. Now, I couldn't get that to 10 just by sliding it, but bear in mind, if we look at the bottom of my screen down in the lower right-hand corner, there, that's my camera, and it's right in the middle, it's right above my iPad, so I can't really see. But what you can do is tap on there instead and actually type it in. So that way you can be absolutely precise. It isn't a hard rule here as to 10 is always the answer. It's really going to depend on the image. I would say looking at that, I found when I did this in rehearsals, I needed to do more work on the high frequency layer if I had it set to 10. There is a possibility if I take that down, I would be able to work. So if I had it sort of around the 6 mark, I may be able to do more work on the colour layer, the low frequency. But we had it at 10 on the desktop, so we'll have it at 10 on here and see how we go. And then all you need to do is apply it. It has a little think about it and it's applied. Now your layers have disappeared. Your filters have disappeared, so tap back on the layers and you'll see what's happened. You do still have the original background layer. But the other background layer, we had 2 copies if you recall, has disappeared. That's been replaced by the low frequency and you now have a high frequency above it. And you can toggle these on and off just by tapping the tick. One thing I find very useful to do when I'm working with it, because I want to do a comparison between where I am now and where I was at the beginning. Now, obviously I can toggle these off and I can see the beginning, but it makes much more sense to me to group the high frequency and the low frequency. To do that, you can have one layer selected just by tapping on it. That blue dot you see is the taps. It's the physical representation of where I'm tapping. You will see 2 of those if I pinch out or pinch in. So if I'm going to group them, I need them selected. So the way to do that is to swipe. So as I'm swiping across there, you can see it goes a lighter shade of grey or brown. That means it's selected. If I tap the middle button, it will then group them. And if I do that, you can see inside it. I can also go into the options and tap on the word group and actually put in the FS for frequency separation. So I can name the group. When I go back out, you can see it's a group. There is a tiny little title at the top that says group, and underneath that, FS for frequency separation. That means I can toggle it on and off with 1 tick instead of 2. That's the only reason I've done that, but it is actually very useful. Good morning, John. What time is it in Australia? Let me know. Okay, so we have the high frequency and we have the low frequency, so we can get going now. What I do first, and this would be the same no matter if it was iPad or desktop, is I take off the high frequency and I look at what's left. Making sure I've got the group turned on or I don't see anything. And basically it's a blurred image. But looking at that image, I can see that there is work, if I go over here, on the colours before I try doing anything with the actual textures. Because some of the darkness that we're getting is the colour. Now that's what I meant when I said you need to think about personas. I'm going to go into the selection persona and I'm going to select the freehand tool there and I'm going to draw. I still have a selection though, so I'm going to deselect so I don't have any selection. Go back to the layers and turn on the high frequency. And let's go back in there. Now I can see the difference. So let's toggle off that. We can see a difference there. That's a lot. Not too much of a difference, to be honest. I would be expecting more of that. What on earth is going on? Let's have a look. I'm hoping I had the right layer selected there. Let me take it back and have a look. Selection, visibility. Are you just doing that? Oh, keep going. Deselect. Oh, no, that was right. That was the one. And I selected it. And I applied a Gaussian blur. So let's have a look at that. Let's do that. Yep, that's fine. Let's apply it. Did I apply it? Maybe that was where I went wrong. Okay, let's deselect that. So back into the select. Come on. Come on, interface, where you come. That looks much better, I think. I think we'll be okay now. So let's turn the high frequency back on. That is indeed better. It's subtle, but it's better. So let's have a look at it. Before, after. The idea here, having frequency short dropouts. Oh, missed 30 seconds from the start of the colour selection. Okay, well, luckily I went through that again. All I did was make a selection of the colour. So I toggled off the high frequency, made a selection on the low frequency, And then I applied a Gaussian blur to it, or a Gaussian blur. So all I did with the colours was blur it. There's lots of ways to do that. You could use the blur tool, you could use a filter, and I used a filter. And then I went back and I turned on the high frequency and I zoomed in, and then I toggled off all the frequency separation work. And you can see there is a difference. When you zoomed in, you can see there's a difference, but to get the overall impact of it, zoom out a bit and toggle it on and off. You don't want the difference to be so noticeable that it looks plastic. Once I've done that with the colour, I then move on to the high frequency and start making some changes to that. So making sure that I'm in this here, the photo persona, I would then go and get one of the repair tools. And the one I used a lot last week, come on. Oh no, I don't want you to do, what are you doing? Good grief. There's a disclosure triangle at the bottom and I'm trying to get to it and it's not doing it. Why are you not doing it? Come on. I know I'm right. I know I am. It's not swapping tools. Why are you not swapping tools for me? Let me get up there and try again. Why did this work perfectly in rehearsals, Mike? It always does, doesn't it? I do not have a selection. I have deselected. Look, deselect. I have gone back to my photo mode and I have tapped on that tool and it's not letting me select it. Why are you not letting me select it? Because you hate me at the moment, don't you? Okay, I'm going to come out of that. I don't know what's the matter with it. I'm not closing the image down. I'm just coming out of it. I can then tap to go back in. Hopefully it will then be in a better mood. A better frame of mind. So let's go and get it. Now it's in a better frame of mind. So if it doesn't work, turn it off and on again. All right, but I don't want the stamp tool. I want the inpainting brush tool. And I'm going to start working on those wrinkles that we've already been working on. So to do that, I need to make sure that I've got the high frequency layer selected. And then when you're looking at the bottom, which is your tool options, you need to be thinking about the width of the brush, the opacity and the flow. Also the hardness of the brush. You really actually want quite a soft brush, otherwise you'll see lines in it. And then it's a matter of drawing on there. Now there is, interestingly here, as we move out there, I don't think I would particularly, because it's going a little bit soft there. It's working, it's a little bit soft. Crazy. Don't make her look plastic. And what I would do, which I can't do at the moment, is I would tend to turn the iPad around when I'm doing it. But I can't do that because you're looking at wear but not flow. Flow is the amount, if you think of flow as ink in an ink pen, you're turning down the amount of ink that's coming through. So it's very, very similar to opacity, but with opacity, you're blasting it out at the level of flow you have selected. You're just hiding some of it. But flow is actually doing it less if you take it down from 100. So actually, flow would work quite nicely here. Let's take the flow down about halfway and do some more up there. It just means as you're working, it's having less of an impact. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't go over it twice. So when you're doing this for real, you're far better to turn the flow down, maybe turn the opacity down as well, and keep having a go and building it up rather than try and get it right with one almighty pass. Because if you look at it and repeat it, with something like that, I would actually do the bit at the bottom and then the bit above the eyebrow and do the bit in the eyebrow separate. And doing it like that might give you a better result. There's also some bits here. That's actually drawing. You should not be drawing. Don't draw. Right, I'm going to just go over that bit there. So just try and do it in multiple passes rather than one pass and you'll get a more natural result. Then that should not be happening. Don't keep doing that. I'm trying to zoom in. Then do it very gently, bit by bit, and go for very subtle, like that. So you're leaving a little bit of an indication maybe of a wrinkle rather than the actual full-blown wrinkle. And if you want to remove more, do it twice. like that. And as I said with that one, I think I'd probably work across with that one and try and get it that way. So it's just a subtle way of doing it. Now this one over here, if I turn off that high frequency and have a look, you can see that there is some of the wrinkle that is colour and some of it that is texture. Could actually have quite an impact with that if I could change that colour slightly. And the best way we've seen to change the colour is to do, which worked so well last time, didn't it? She said sarcastically. Right, let's go and try and close the... If you want to mitigate it further, then go in with your in-painting brush on the high frequency layer and just go across it, trying to make sure you don't go crazy and turn her into a 3-year-old. But now you've affected the low frequency with the colours and the high frequency. And it's made a huge difference. Absolutely huge difference on the right-hand side. You would then carry on working round. So on the high frequency here, 100, but I did change the flow. So that's why it's not doing it. Well, why it's taking me a little bit longer, why I might have to do things 2 and 3 times. But it gives me more control. It's more subtle. I'm not going to, with one stroke of the Apple, change her into a 20-year-old. I might need to use 4 or 5 strokes of the Apple Pencil to do that. So actually, I think it's quite handy to change that. And then working in here, just keep working around. Do keep checking, because what will happen is your eyes will start seeing elements that you think, oh, I can change that and I can change that. And before you know it, it's overdone. But if I just show you this round, but I won't, I'll try and do it without. So working across the bridge of the nose, remembering I'm at 50% flow, so I'd have to do it twice if I wanted a huge impact. Right, let's have a look at that. And let's toggle off where we were. So it is, you can perfectly edit that just as well on an iPad as you could on a desktop. That is the essence of the demo, that yes, you can. In fact, there would be an argument, particularly if you've got a bigger iPad, that your pencil would enable you to do it better than a mouse would. I must admit, I am quite comfortable doing that on an iPad, but I do like to hold the iPad and turn it round. So doing it in a demo like this, where it's tethered to the desk, is actually quite difficult. But point of the demo is it can all be done on an iPad. You can then, of course, take this file back to the desktop if you wanted to, and then carry on with it on the desktop. If you are wondering how to do that, you come out of the edit and then you go into there and you can save that. So it's saving it, and it's saved it up to iCloud Drive. So now that would be available to me in iCloud Drive, and I could open it up from Affinity Photo for the Mac. Right, okay, now while I've got my iPad here, we'll do the next bit. Just thinking, while it's fabulous, once I have to move this, it gets all giddy with itself. I don't think I had anything huge, to be honest, in my presentation, but we'll go with it anyway. Right, it was an app that I mentioned last week, which is MapNote for iOS. It is a limitless canvas, and it's sold as notes, but also mind mapping and a whiteboard. Now, many moons ago, both Mike and I used Adobe Ideas. Adobe Ideas was fabulous. It was pretty much what this does, but it was a very good app. Needless to say, we all know Adobe. They binned it. So I had a look at this. It's 99 pence or 99 cents. So I figured, you know what, for 99p, I'll have a go with it. As I said in the opening, both Mike and I used exactly the same word, primitive. But if that's what you need it to do, it's there. So let's have a look at it. While I have my iPad out. iPad. Right, let's bring my iPad screen back. Okay. And there it is, the app. I've got it on my home screen there, MapNote. So let's go into it. Would you like to? No, I would not like to edit the last one. I've got two there that I've had a go with. They are actually genuine. One is the comic creation kit, and the other was some stuff I was thinking about for today. But when you go into it, that's the interface you've got. You won't have any files. There are no demo files or anything. Scalpel is good on a Mac. I so wish there was a version of Scalpel for iOS. I have tried a couple of others that claim to be almost Scalpel, but they're not. Scalpel is lovely and free form, but you can link stuff when you need to. And it is text-based, whereas this is Apple Pencil based. I'm not thinking they'll ever put Scalpel on an iPad, not the length of time it took them to get Scrivener on an iPad, no, but it would be amazing. Normally, when I do this kind of work, which is the two things that you can see there, which look a little bit like mind maps, I do use MindNode, and MindNode is amazing. MindNode's available for the iPad and the Mac, so I just flick between the two. Very, very good developer with MindNode, constantly giving you updates and betas and new features. So happy to recommend that, but that's typed and its branches are added to it, whereas this is drawn. This is hand-drawn. It is basically a 99p way of turning your iPad into a whiteboard. So you first of all have this option to use the Apple Pencil. So you can toggle that on and off. When you toggle it on, it says you'll be able to draw using the pencil and scroll by touch. Without that turned on, you'll be drawing when you're trying to scroll. So that's turned on. Next thing you need to do is plus, and that's it. You're into the app and you can start working. As you can see, very, very few tools. There is the pencil tool at the top. That, I'd actually tap that, but you could just start drawing on it. It's a whiteboard. You've got your undo, and when you tap on the pencil, you get your colours at the bottom, and they do scroll. There is some extra, but on this 11-inch iPad, they're pretty much all on the screen. You also have the width. You can have a very narrow line. I've got on for the second one. Third one, bit bigger. Next one, way big. So let's have a look at those. Yes, I think the second one is Baby Bear's just about right. So those are the differences you've got there. To change the colour, you literally just tap the colour. And it's that simple to change it. And that is pretty much all that does. Obviously, what they're saying is put your central concept in the middle. So central concept round there, and then start drawing off it as you would a mind map. So if you are, people are saying like Notability, I like GoodNotes. Yes, there's Apple Notes as well. The thing is, this is limitless. So I can take it in and I can start drawing. So let's say I'm drawing like this, and that's the edge of my paper. But I can keep going. So as I get near the edge of the paper expands. So I can start moving it in. Now, OneNote is the nearest I've seen to that, where you can do an L like that. And now my original diagram is there. It's right there. Now I'd need that, wouldn't I? So we can see it. It's right there. That's my original drawing. And I can just keep zooming out and zooming out. Now, Notability and GoodNotes are both more intended. We've lost the... Yes, it didn't like that, did it? I'll put my pencil there. We've lost the focus on that as I was zooming in and out. There we go. We're back. I'll just move out of the way a bit. Oh, no, it's gone. I'll come back. I'll put a finger there for focus. That's my focus finger. Come on. There we go. Focus finger. Right. They're both intended to be you set the size of the page, whereas this isn't. This is a limitless whiteboard. I mean, to some degree, it's pretty useless because once you get out to that level, what on earth would you do with it? But if you need a limitless whiteboard, you have got it. And then you just keep adding on, changing the colour and adding on bits like that. There we go. Now, I'm going to ask Mike a question live. Are you going to give this a go?
I already have.
Well, I know you bought it.
I played with it.
Yes, but I mean use it.
Yeah.
There we go. Can you export? You can indeed. The export's pretty limited, but you can. There is this in the very top right-hand corner. There is that share option, which is export. You can send as an image or you can send as a PDF. Now, I did it by sending it as a PDF. And I think I saved it to files. And I think I put it in my demo data. What I'll do this time is I will go to my demo data. And can I add a folder? Oh, it doesn't look like I can add a folder. I'll add it. The interesting thing with that is when I do it, it didn't give me an option to give it a name. That's one thing that I found interesting. I'll also save it as an image and send it to the same place. So I don't want to send it to the cameras.
No, I don't get multiple. Oh, no.
Oh, look at all my things appearing. Save to files. There we go. And we'll send it in the same place. What are you muttering, Mike?
I don't get multiple colours. The fingers have gone at the bottom.
What do you mean they've gone? Tap the pencil at the top.
Ah,
and now they're back.
Right, there you go. I've used it.
Hello, my name is Hello.
But it should have said mine.
Be great. Well, if you can't remember
there
to
we go.
Right, my name is... Fair enough. Give me that iPad. Give
No.
me the
No,
iPad.
I'm deleting it.
Oh, are you really? I was going to show everybody your work of art.
Go on then.
Right, so let's put Mike's iPad underneath the camera. This is why Mike doesn't do... There we go. This is why Mike doesn't do the design demos. There we go. There we go. Back you go, Mike. At least mine had different colours.
I'm going to make a work of art over the next hour.
Right, you carry on and make a work of art, Mike.
Yeah.
Once you've got your file, if you then go back, it adds your file into here. I did find this a bit weird because I thought, well, how do I delete something? And I thought, well, you know, it's usually a long tap. No, that goes into it. But there is the burger menu in the top left. When you go to there, you have delete notes and send a bug report. And I thought, well, are you going to delete all of them? Oh, no. But there's no way out of that. Oh, there is now. It was misbehaving before. So I thought, well, I'll risk it. And what happens is when you say delete notes, you get a little cross in the top right-hand corner of each one. And from there, you can tap it. Are you sure you want to delete the note? Yes. And that's how you manage them. That is really all that does. You're right. OneNote, when you tap done, when you're done, OneNote does do that. You just have to keep going in and putting an L in the lower right-hand corner and it will keep extending. The problem I've got with OneNote is, and I used it as a reply, I used Evernote and then I moved to OneNote. And then I had problems with it syncing. OneNote hates me. It pretty much syncs whenever it feels like it, which isn't often if you're me. So because of the syncing problem and the fact that it's great when you have an amount of notes that you can see. What I mean by that is Evernote uses tags to organise, whereas OneNote doesn't. So it's a very physical organisation in OneNote. You have notebooks, you have sections, you have subsections, you have pages. Once you get to a point where you have a lot of pages, it becomes very difficult to manage. I found to manage it effectively, I was spending, in my opinion, far too long organising it. I don't think it would have been any better with tags because tags only work if you tag everything. And sometimes you just quickly want to get it and you're done. And you don't bother putting the tags in and then the tagging system breaks down. So I moved to Notion and my notes are now fabulous. I'm not saying Notion's perfect, but it's working brilliantly for me. Okay, what export as the PDF? Does it make it a certain size page? Shrink the text? Let's have a look. Let's have a look. It should have saved the demo file into iCloud in my demo data folder, so I'll do it. Now, it actually called it a PDF document, which is not helpful, is it? That was the one today, actually. So what did it call it? PDF document? Let's have a look. I'm looking in my Finder and I'm not even seeing it. I do not see anything in there from today. Has it just overwritten the other one? Oh no, there we go. So here's my demo. Let's get rid of my, because that's to the front. Right, this is my demo-y stuff. So this afternoon, oh yes, it's all rehearsed this. There's the one I had this afternoon and exported, and that's the one that I've just exported now. So it's not very helpful because it doesn't let you give it any kind of name. And this PNG image is the image version. So that one there, let's open it. And we'll see what we've got in PDF Expert. It is literally, it's shrinking it. It's showing you everything. So you've got the circles that I drew, and I drew these L shapes to expand it. So it shrinks it, which may or may not be what you want. What I did think with this was very good. As I zoomed in, the quality was pretty decent. So it was definitely vector, and it was a decent quality, which means that you get the full size of the note or your whiteboard, and you can zoom in, and it's still not bad quality. So it's not pixelating as you zoom in. So it's not bad. Can you search? No chance. No, not at all. If you OCR'd it, but as you can see, my handwriting's not the best for OCRing, but no, it is very primitive. It's one step up from picking up a whiteboard pen and drawing on a whiteboard.
Why don't you show them that? That's much better.
Oh, look at this. Oh, my word. He's become Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Let me get that on my iPad and bring that back. Where's my camera? Where's my camera? Here we go. Look what he's done. Isn't he proud of it? Look at that. I'll move it down so you can see it go. The ball going in the net. So maybe United will put it in. Have I tried printing it? No, I haven't. I'd like to see actually what size that is coming from PDF Expert. I'm reckoning it would shrink it. There you go, Mike. There's your toy back. Let's go back into PDF Expert and have a go. So I'm getting my keyboard and I'm doing my Command and P. Obviously, I do not want to send this to a printer, but let's have a look at it. It's thinking about it. My default is to create a PDF in iCloud, but I do actually physically have a printer attached. You see, Andreas is very happy with that. Impressed. Oh, my printer's not behaving. Oh, here we go.
Delete it now.
My brother printer's not happy. It's a long story. We'll leave it alone. I'll do it to a PDF because what I can do is I can just save it as a PDF. I'm thinking that it's making 100%, but it's saying paper size A4. So I think it is just A4. So all that will do is make it A4. But we'll do it anyway. Save as a PDF. We will stick it on the desk. It's struggling, actually. It's really slowing it down. But we'll put that on the desktop and we'll open that one. See what that's like. Yeah, that's clearly zoomed in a lot, isn't it? Let's zoom out. Where we go. Where is it? Here it comes in. There we go. So it's A4, but you could zoom in. But then that's going to depend on if you've got an app that will let you zoom in at that level. So it's not bad for 99p. If they kept up the development on it, it might be worthwhile keeping an eye on it. I would say at the moment it's probably worth 99p. When you see what you can get from GoodNotes and Notability for just a few pounds, I think they'd need to put a lot more work into it for that. But if you have a need to just whiteboard something and maybe share it with an audience, it would work for that. As you've seen here, I am AirPlaying my iPad to my Mac. What I could do in here, I can enter full screen with that. So that is what that would actually look like. If I now leave my mouse alone, if you can imagine that that was, let's get another one. And let's do some squiggles. Right, here we go. You can imagine that you were demonstrating that. I mean, I can see it's got use in education. Because you can ping copies to people, you can see it on a big screen. It's got possibilities. can you select and scale sections? No, there is no selection involved at all. It is literally a pen and a piece of paper. When you've done it, that's it. So it is very, very, very primitive. If what you want is quick and dirty, it's not bad. What we thought we'd do, Mike, you need to make a note. Mike and I already have a solution for this. In fact, we have two. And that would be what we use. So we took a detour looking at this, but this can't be shared either. It's not a collaborative solution. But the two solutions that Mike and I use are collaborative as well as being extensible whiteboards. So two people can work on it, two or more people can work on it at the same time. And you can edit things. So we'll take a look at our preferred solutions next week, but we thought we'd have a look at that while I've got my iPad out. So I don't have to put the camera in and out and all the rest of it. So we thought we'd have a look at it. I think for 99p, that's what I'd pay for it. More than that, I don't think I would. If you had a need or you want to keep the kids occupied for a bit, it's not bad. But to use, I can tell from the questions you're asking, you are way ahead of what this app can actually do. It's very, very basic. Maybe, I would definitely get it if it comes on offer, you know, where they do a freebie for 24 hours. Get it then. Get it then. But other than that, no. Stick with one of the ones we'll demonstrate next week. Right, I am exiting full screen and I will lose Air Server. And I will lose multicam. Until later. Well, in fact, I better leave multicam alone. If I do that, all sorts will happen. Right, so I'm losing my iPad. I have no idea what's coming up next because my running order. Jamboard's one of our solutions and the other solution is from Microsoft. I know, Microsoft, but it works. So Jamboard's working well for us. I prefer Jamboard. I'm thinking Mike possibly prefers, is it Microsoft Whiteboard?
Microsoft Whiteboard.
But we'll have a look. We'll do a head-to-head next week with them. We might even be able to invite people live to go edit. You never know. Right, so what's next? Oh, yes, Pixelmator Pro. Sorry, Peter. But, you know, Microsoft, they have chucked out the old Kool-Aid, started drinking some new stuff, and it's not bad. I mean, no, I'm not about to switch, but they do have a few apps that aren't bad. They're not bad. Right, Pixelmator Pro. Let me know in the chat if you use Pixelmator Pro. What Mike could do, because I didn't, sorry about that, I did do an entire session when Pixelmator Pro came out, and it's on my YouTube channel. Mike will find the link, because he's good like that. It came out it was over a year ago now, and people were actually quite disappointed with it, because it wasn't, in their mind, Pixelmator Pro. It was a completely different beast. What they've done since then is release updates. As you can see, this is the Hummingbird update. They're very nice, their updates, but they're basically building back in features that I think a lot of people hoped were there from the beginning because they were already in Pixelmator. So in their mind, what made that Pixelmator Pro? Well, what made it Pixelmator Pro was all the machine learning that was in it, and that's what's covered in that demonstration that Mike's got there. So this is literally, it's not going to be that long a demo. If you're using Affinity Photo, you'll look at these features and think, really? They weren't there? Well, they are now. They've added zooming. Now, I know what you're thinking. Really? How could you edit without that being there? Well, the thing was, there was zooming, but they've improved it. So one of the things I'll look at is zooming. Another thing that they've added is they've beefed up the crop tool. You can actually delete stuff now. Now, when I say layers, I don't mean they've added layers. It always had the ability to work with layers, but now it's nested layers. So I've got an image to show that. And apparently this was the #1 request. It links in with the Photos app. As you'll see when I show you this, there is not a photo in my Photos app. Not one. I've never quite got beyond iPhoto, I'll be honest. I don't really want, I take so many images on my iPhone of rubbish. You're in a shop, I need to know what price that is. I'll compare it with the one next door. I don't want those going in my Photos app, so I just don't bother. Rather than triage the thing, I just don't bother. Right, so Pixelmator Pro. You can see I've got both on there, but this is Pixelmator Pro. The Pro part, so it was all the machine learning side. Now it's opened up off screen, which is not helpful, is it? Let's get a new document. That will work well. And then maybe we can see it on the main screen. No, you don't want to show yourself on the main screen. There we go. That's what it looks like. Now I know Graham uses Pixelmator. Did you make the move to Pixelmator Pro, or are you using the pair of them, or did you have a problem with Metal? This, when the app came out, the biggest problem was I couldn't buy it. That was a problem for me. The problem was you needed to have, I think it was High Sierra. It was either High Sierra or Sierra. And I hadn't done the upgrade. I did the upgrade so I could purchase the thing, and then found it wouldn't work on the machine I'd upgraded. I needed a machine that was more modern than the one I had because it needed to support Metal. And I think that was, Graham, didn't you come a cropper at that point? Because I think your Mac and my older Mac are the same. So I ended up having to upgrade a machine just so I could buy the thing. This isn't good, is it? Anyway, let's have a look at some of the things that this one can do. So let me get my data files. Somewhere here, I have some data files. Hummingbird. I don't think, Graham, you're missing anything, being honest. Some of the features in here are very nice, but a lot of what they're doing, including... Pixelmator does work with photos, doesn't it? The original one, I'm sure it does. They're just catching up. So I've got an image here. We've got my emergency image. Let's open up that one. The one I used on the presentation. So I've got this image in here. It says gadget. Because you know the original was called that. So let me show you what that was called. Emergency alert keyboard blah 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 from Getty Images. But when I dragged and dropped it in, it became known as gadget. It's making a guess as to what that actually is at the point it brings it in. So that's part of the machine learning of it. So that's the image that I've dragged in, and it's put it in on a layer of its own. And the first thing that we are looking at is, where on earth has it gone? Oh, it's transforming. Lovely. Because I'm in the transform tool at the moment. What I actually need to be is in the zoom. So let's go into the zoom. So let's switch tools. There we go. We've switched tools. So what they've done is they've beefed up this zoom in the top right hand corner. So you can now zoom in like this. So if you've ever used Photoshop, it's that, isn't it? And they've added this ability. So you can zoom in and then drag it around. Now, I think that should be a given in most image editing applications, to be honest. I really do. I'm quickly having a look, see if all my... Do you use OpenGL or Metal in Affinity Photo Performance? I think Affinity Photo uses Metal automatically. And it certainly uses all of the visual Metal options. I didn't explain that very well, did I? The Metal enhancements on an iPad that enable the screen to keep up with a good rate, it uses all of that. Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer are the apps that Apple actually demonstrate when they're demonstrating Metal. So they're making a big fuss of it, having been Pixelmator Pro, you know, you can't use it without Metal. To be honest, I found it quite laggy when I worked with it, even though it did support Metal. And stuff like this, you know, I'm using shortcuts here. I'm using Command and 0 for zoom in and that. I don't actually think what they've done, which is this stuff, is that fantastic. But they've added it. That's one of the things they've added. There you go. They've added it. So I've shown it you. Right, the next thing they brought in was cropping. So up to the tools here, and we should have a crop tool. And I am not seeing it. Where on earth have you gone? Don't disappear on me. There's crop. Oh, it's under image. Lovely. It throws me, actually, because the tools are over on the right-hand side, and I think in most other image editors, they're on the left. But I've now got it active. If we look at the corners, the cropping is active. Now, if I just take that in and we focus in on the emergency key there, so taking it in like that. The big thing they are pushing with this is something most other image apps have anyway, which is the mode. The crop now has two modes. It has the default mode of hide and it has a delete mode. So if you are uncertain, you've got that client who doubtless will change their mind, then you can choose to hide it. And if you apply it, it will hide it. You go back into it and you can still see the image and all of the canvas that was there before. If you go to delete and apply it, and then go back into it, you can see all the original pixels and the extra canvas has gone. Now, the good side of that is if you've got a huge image and you only want to work on a tiny bit of it, then you've just made the file size smaller. But obviously the downside is once something's deleted, you cannot put it back. So although they're trumpeting the fact they've added in a delete mode, most other apps have been trumpeting the fact they've added in a hide mode. So I'm not quite sure where they're coming from with that, but you get the idea. Right, so we'll cancel out of that. All right, the other thing that they've added is the support for layered images. Now, they're not talking about the image you're working with. They're not talking about this one in here, because you already have a background layer and you already have your gadget layer. They are talking about, so let me bring it in for you. Here is a panda. It's an Affinity designer file. Come on, Panda, show yourself. There we go. There's the panda. Now, obviously it can't open an Affinity designer file, but I have exported an SVG file. And what it will let me do is drag that, which is a vector, into another file. Bring it in. There's my panda. And all its layers. So it's a vector, and all of these, it's rastered it on the way in, but all of the pieces are available in there. That might be important if I wanted to change, I'm assuming, are they his ears? Or is it, I'm not quite sure which bit they were. Oh, let's have a play with them. You could basically change the colour of them. There's his ears. There's his ears. You could work with those independently. So you have support for layers within external files that you have added into the file that you are working with. Again, I'm not sure how important that would be to somebody, but you never know. You never know. Right, I'm going to actually come out of Pixelmator Pro now completely. So no, I don't want. What I do have is an image. Oh, it was my emergency keyboard image. Right, what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to run photos. And as I said, you will see. I use it a lot, don't I? Not. Apparently that's what it looks like. Who knew? Right, what I'm going to do is drag and drop that emergency keyboard into it. So just add one image, basically. There's my one image. And I can open that up and have a look at it. There's my image. Now, the addition that they've done is, in here, you can choose to edit this image. Edit photo. I'm now in edit mode. So I'm editing it within the Photos app. Up here, you have the ability to use tools from other applications. So a lot of you are Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo users. Well, you know Studio Link, where you are in one app and then boom, it magically becomes another app. That's what they've built in here, basically. You can see that I've got haze removal and liquify and things coming from Affinity. Can also edit it in Affinity Photo. If I do that, it's going to crank up Affinity Photo and off it's going to go. It's going to pass that image over to Affinity Photo. But you'll see that there is a Pixelmator Pro option. And if I click that, the Photos app actually becomes Pixelmator Pro. So you can see it's the Photos app at the top, but when you look next to it, you've got Photos and Pixelmator Pro. So Pixelmator Pro is alive within the Photos app. So it's basically Studio Link inside Photos, is what it is. How good that's going to be down the line, I wouldn't like to say. And how important that would be for somebody, I wouldn't like to say. I don't think I work in the same way that most people seem to work, which is they drag their photos into wherever, so in this case the Photos app, and then they actually work on that image. I'm old school. They're backed up somewhere. So I work on an image, and then when I'm done, I will put it where it's going to live. Now, Neil says, what do you use for photo organisation? That's a really good question. I used to use Lightroom. It was Lightroom that got me onto the Mac. And I loved Lightroom, but I hate what they've done to it. I also always wanted my images external to the application, so they were never locked up in it in the same way that Aperture used to prefer. I didn't want to spend that long managing them. I wanted to spend that long either editing them or doing things with them, not actually just managing them. So my images are on my hard drive in folders. I don't tend to have a database of anything anywhere. There are exceptions to that. I can show you some images that I need organisation with. If I show you what the images are, you'll appreciate why. I have an app called Pixsave. Let's bring that over to this and go full screen there. Right, this is just like any other photo organising app that you would see. The difference is, for me, these are the chapter markers for MacBites. They are actually the show art and credits. There are 21 chapter markers. There they are. And there are now, because we do a review of the year, 12 with those in. Those kind of assets I need in the right order. Somewhere I can drag and drop them into my audio editor. So I use an app called Pixsave, but don't dash out and buy it, because I don't think it's had an update in living memory. And I would say it's possibly on the cusp. But those are the kind of images that I need management for. These, if you look at them, are not organised alphabetically. So CM, which is chapter marker, welcome, needs to come before MacBites, which comes before Chatbytes, which comes after, etc. They are in the order that we put them in the show. And this will let me do that. So if I wanted to put my wrap up there, I could do that. This lets me organise them manually, and I love that. But I don't put all my photos in here. No. I too loved Aperture, but once they went, it's maintenance, and you know, we're not going to support it and blah blah blah. But you can carry on using it. Yeah, right. And I didn't. I dropped it straight away, I'm afraid. Capture One. I've dabbled with Capture One. I've dabbled with most of them, but I feel that there is a huge hurdle at the beginning, and you really do have to go all in with them. And I'm not prepared to do it yet. I don't believe there's any of them that wouldn't shut up shop tomorrow, left alone. So at the moment, I don't do anything with them. What I do, they're in my hard drive, and they are organised. I rename the files in such a way that they all make total sense. All the metas in them. So technically speaking, I should be able to add tens of thousands of images to the right organiser if and when it ever appears, because it's all in the files. And that's the way I'm doing it at the moment. I'm not... Luckily, I'm in a position I can do that. If I was working with clients, there's no way that would be scalable. That wouldn't work. I believe they did, and they also had another app out a while ago. Can't for the life of me remember what it was called, but they gave it away free for one day. And other than that, I think it was about £60 or £70. And it was very, very good. So I'd certainly have a look at it. I was surprised with Google, because Google took on John Knack, who used to work for Adobe. He was head honcho for Photoshop. And I expected Google to try and outmaneuver Adobe. And then they were buying things and selling things and resting things. I can see my photos will end up in Google, but not at the moment they won't. Maybe one day they will. So basically that's the fourth thing that they've added, the ability to, massive air quotes, studio link Pixelmator Pro into photos. Me, not going to use that. I would not edit a photo that was in my archive. Something wouldn't get into my archive until it was edited. But that could just be me. That could just be me. Right, let's get rid of that then. Okay, let's head back into here. Oh, we have freebies. We have freebies. We have our usual freebies from Creative Market. Don't miss these. Some of them are cartoony. Nice font this week. There's also a PowerPoint template, and I always find PowerPoint templates are worth having, if only for examples. So nice PowerPoint template and 3 fonts. Most of those fonts could absolutely be used in our comic creation kit, but I have an extra one this week. Shutterstock wrote to me and said, we got some free gradients. And I thought, that's fabulous, because I'm looking at gradients this week. So they have some very nice gradients. They have a tutorial for how to use them, but it's all Photoshop. So if you want to use them in Affinity, they will work. You will just have to think about it slightly differently. Which takes us neatly on to our Comic Creation Kit Part 2. No idea how many parts this is going to have yet, but more than 2, I'll tell you that. We looked at Comic Life a few weeks back, and I'd made comics in it, and they were fantastic. But it started to grind to a halt, so I was interested in trying to replace it. So last week we looked at 3 apps that potentially could replace it, depending on how I wanted to work. It was Affinity Publisher, it was Designer, and Keynote, and all 3 of them were pretty decent. We also looked at some... why are you not moving? We looked at some bundles that you could buy to get a head start on creating your kit. Mike will put the links in for those, and they are still available right now. We looked at backgrounds and where to get them from, and basically it was, you could comicize any backgrounds that you can get from anywhere. So it was things like Pixabay and anywhere you could get backgrounds from. We also looked at page layouts, and we made some master pages. So that's where we were at with that. We'd got to the page layout stage. So, part 2. Part 2, we're going to look at colours. So you're going to need some bright comic colours. Now, I don't intend with this. Let's have a look at it in Affinity Publisher, and let's see if I've got the comic. I do, that's fabulous. Let's open up that. I don't intend to cover the whole of Colour Will Be Here All Night, but I do have, Mike, I've not put the link in, 2 things online on YouTube, 2 epic tutorials, one for photo and one for designer, where I talk about all of the colour things that you can do. Now, what on earth is going on here? I can see I've got interface elements all over the place. Where are you? What are you doing? There's colour. That's not good. Why have I got half a dialogue box? I have half a dialogue box. There we go. Let's lose that. Let's put the colour back where it belongs.
Working with colour and Affinity Design.
Yes, both of those, Mike. Both of those. No, I didn't want you there. I'm going to have to reset this interface. It's flying around. But I have got colour in here somewhere. Here we go. Colour, colour, colour. Yes, colour needs to be up there. It needs to be separate. Let's put the 3 together where they live. There we go. So we have colour, we have swatches, we have stroke. That's better. And they should live right up there, but it's not plain bold, so we'll leave them where they are. Okay. You can see we've got bright colours here. That was an image that we dragged in. What I'm looking at is when you're working with comics, you can download palettes for comics that are the right colour. You know, the colours that would be associated with comics, or you can make your own. You will need at a minimum, before you do that, to understand the different types of colour palette that you have in Affinity. Now, you may say to me, well, I'm using Keynote and I don't need to understand that. Well, you do, because some of what's in Affinity is available system-wide and some isn't. So I have mentioned this before, but it never hurts to go over it. I'm going to ignore the Pantone options at the bottom. They are great if you are printing out to bureaus, but other than that, most people leave them alone. So ignoring the Pantone, we have a collection of palettes that have the Apple logo next to them. Now, if you're on Windows, you will not have the benefit of all of this. Windows works differently. What follows is the way the Mac works with it. These palettes with the Apple logo are system palettes, and that's important. It's important because if I open up Pages or Keynote or Numbers or any other app, and I put some text into it or a shape, and I would like it formatted, so let's go for a blank document and put a shape in it. Poor machine struggling, can't even make a blank file in Pages. Come on, I know it's warm. Oh, good grief, you really are struggling. Oh, well done. Right, so just basically put a shape in. Right, all the palettes that you see in Affinity Publisher, which helpfully not disappear. But we can handle that. Can I just draw around that? Right, what I'm doing is, that is a screen cap. It's not the interface, it's a screen cap. But it will sit there when I bring Pages back so I can refer to it. So I have colours available in here. You've seen these before. And I have colours in here. So I have a range of colours. But I also have this, which is the system colour picker, which people think is just crayons, basically. And you can change the colour of it to any of the crayons. And indeed, you can. But also in here, you've got your colour wheel, you've got your sliders, and you've got this one, this third one up here. These are your colour palettes. So when you click the drop down, look what we have in there. Not necessarily in alphabetical order. We have Apple, we have systems in there somewhere. We have ScreenFlow 7 and we have assets for the Blue Yeti. Basically, we have the same palettes that are available in here with the Apple logo. And that's why it's important. If you've been working in Pages or Keynote and you've taken the time and you've made a system palette, you will find it available in Affinity Designer, Affinity Publisher and Affinity Photo. If you haven't, if you've done it in there, then they will be available system-wide. So I made a palette for the Blue Yeti. And I can go into there. I can go and choose that. These were the colours that I used. And I want that to be that colour. Or I want it to be a grey colour. Not the best one I've ever done, is it, that one? Oh, that's not good either. We had all the church colours. All the churches in all the colours in all of the sizes. There you go. So very, very useful to make something a system palette if you're going to need it somewhere else. That's one type of palette. And now I can double click that to get rid of it. Right. The other type of palette is application palettes. You may want to make something an application palette like colours. There are a lot of colours in there. Or gradients. There are gradients. These are only available to Affinity. So at the moment that's in Affinity Publisher. I would assume the same is available in Designer and Photo, but they are only available in the application. So when you pick your colours, which is very straightforward, all you would need to do is go and not do that. Go and grab the colour picker and choose a colour. That's now up there. And if I just show you applying that by drawing a shape in there. So we have a box and I would like that to be that colour. That now has that colour as a fill. So I will put that all over there. There's a nice colour. And if I don't want the black border on it, take that away. Right, so that is a colour that I might like to use elsewhere. it appears on my recent. I can double click it, and that hex code I can copy. That's one way of doing it. That would take forever. We don't want to do that. What we'd like to do is have a range of colours that we're going to use and create a palette for them. Now, the first thing you need to decide in here is what type of palette would you like to create? Because I said there were 3 of them, and so far we've seen 2. We've seen system and we've seen application. There's also a third one, which is document. So when I go to the burger menu, I have an application palette, a document palette, and a system palette. This is the point you need to decide, where do you want to use these colours? If it's only an Affinity publisher, you could make an application palette. If it's only in this file, you could make a document palette. If it's system-wide, because you're going to need to do a presentation advertising the availability of your comic, you might want it to be a system palette. So that's the first decision. We haven't actually got or seen a document palette at the moment, so I'll create one. Now we have a document palette. It's called Unnamed. That's really helpful. So I'll go up to here and rename the palette. I tend to call the first one document, if I could spell. There we go. So I know it's a document palette. We have looked at this before, but it's complicated and you forget. If I show you an application palette and I show you a system palette, there is a button next to the palette to add the current fill to the palette. But if I've got a document palette selected, in addition to that, the ability to add it, I have the ability to create a global colour. That might push you to creating a document palette rather than one of the other kinds of palette. For that, you're going to say to me, but why? Because I can't remember what all that's about. So let's create something here. We have this nice colour there. It's garish, isn't it? Let's say we wanted to make that available in this document. So I will add it. There is one shape. And I'm just going to copy and paste that a couple of times. So I have these. Now, if I go into here and I think that is a little bit garish, I think I want it a little bit more muted. Maybe more like that. That looks better. Then I can apply it by selecting it and clicking on the colour. But changing it made no impact on these two. I would have to apply it to those two. Okay, so that's a little bit on the manual side, isn't it? That's the issue with it. So I'm just making multiple copies of this. This time I will, with that colour, add it, but I'm going to add it as a global colour. The difference is that one has a tiny, and it is tiny, isn't it? It's tiny, a tiny triangle. That tells you it's a global colour. I'm going to make sure that that global colour is applied to all 3 of these shapes. Now I'm going to make a change to it. So double click on it and change the colour. And as I change the colour, it changes the colour on all 3. That's fabulous. You may have a client who changed their colour. Let's make it purplish. You can even go down here and fiddle with that. You can make it really garishly purple. There we go. A little bit more maroony. There we go. So you've got a client, they changed their mind about a colour. That actually happened to me. And that's a really quick way of doing it. You will thank yourself for doing that. You really will. Don't, by the way, you can rename these. So you can right click and rename global colour. So let's say, you might be tempted to put maroon. Don't do that because it might be green next week. So if you put something like primary 1, and then let's say that we're going to add that as a global colour, then that one may be a primary 2. And then you would create accent colours and call them that. Global is definitely better for branding, but you have to be aware of the fact it only exists in one document. Because of that, there is a way that you can convert all the palettes between the different types. That's way beyond what I'm doing tonight. I did promise, because I was asked, that I would do an Affinity Publisher, working with colour in Affinity Publisher, because the other two sessions are identical. One is for designer, one is for photo. There is very little difference between them. Publisher is going to be very similar, but I would use Publisher demonstrations. So I will repeat the working with colour in, but I will do it in Affinity Publisher. It's going to be well over an hour, because there's a lot of things that you can do. But there is a couple of utilities you can get for converting the palettes between colours. You can export them, import them, you can do all kinds of things with them. So that would be worth seeing. I just need to find a date for it. So I've added that as a primary colour. I go through and I apply it to the others, and then the same principles apply. As you make a change to it, it changes the whole lot. So it's definitely worth it, depending on the type of work that you're doing. You just have to seriously think it through. And I think a lot of people dive in, make something, and then you've got to go back and think, how should I have designed this? Styles are very similar. You will know what your style should be when you've finished your document. But at the beginning, you're just like, I need a header and I'm just testing it. And if you've ever programmed, it's the same as dimming X as an integer. The moral of that story is don't always name your variables. So you need to think ahead. Just be aware that there are those differences and then think that through. In terms of picking up colours, well, I picked up some. Let's lose these out of the way. I picked up some from here. So I could create a whole palette of oranges just from in here, just by using the colour picker, dragging it down. There's a nice flame colour. So once I've got it on there, I should... No, you're not going to do that, are you? Let's undo that. Let's go back and get that nice orange. I was trying to shortcut it and it wasn't having any of it. Right, so we will select one of those, put that colour in there. That adds it in here, and then I can add that as a global, and away we go. And it's just a matter of going through there, applying it, and then adding it as a colour. And you will build up these things and then give them names. So that's the first thing, colour. Very, very simple to work with. You just need to think about it. You will be able to find comic palettes that you can download and install into here. We will see that when I have got some. But the next thing to think about is gradients, because so far we've looked at solid colour and we need to look at gradient colour. Gradients are really straightforward. They can be as complicated as you like, or as straightforward as you like, and they work really well for comics. So let me get that and stretch it out across the whole of there. Right, we need to put a gradient on it. Well, we've got fills, as you've seen in there, and there are swatches, and there are colours, and there are gradients. You also have a gradient tool. So you could just apply a gradient fill by going into the gradients and using one of these. Or you could use this and you could actually draw your gradient in. Now that gradient has a starting point and it has an end point, and you get to decide what colours they are by selecting the start point or the end point and putting a colour on it. Doesn't end there though. It shows you the midpoint, and you can move the midpoint. But you can also click and add other colours to it. Oh, it's starting to look bad, isn't it? Oh, that's bad. But there you go. You can do that, and you can move those points about. There you go. Now, once you've got your gradient, so that has a gradient. There is the gradient up there. You can fiddle about with it in here as well. So if you wanted to edit it in there, you could do that. So there, I've selected that point. There's the colour of it. If I wanted to tweak that by making it darker and see what it looks like, I can actually do that in there as well. And once I've got that in there, then I can reverse it So if I wanted to see it the other way around, that's not actually an improvement. You can change the type of a gradient. You can have linear gradients, which is straight. You can do an elliptical one, which doesn't change it that much, but radial would. Now that's going to depend on how you've actually put this in. See it? As I stretch this out, it is actually making it radial. It's not an improvement, is it? Not good at all. You can see in the preview what that's actually doing with it. And you've got one of these as well, which works better if there's lots more colours. I'll say that. It doesn't work great like that. But if I put the centre point down here, you can see the other colours are actually there. Right, so your gradients. Now your gradients are appearing in the recent. So there's one that we've got for a start. So that's the one that's in here. There is nothing to stop you adding that in here. So let's add that. And we should have added that. Is that added? You're going to add, yeah, global colour 4. You just keep adding it, don't you? Yep, you've added it down there. So you can do that as well. That's important for your comics. Now, I am going to give you homework. Why have I come out of Keynote, Mike? I have no idea why I would have come out at Keynote. But I'm going to give you homework for this one. So let's dive back in to Keynote. I'm going to give you homework. Right, let's have a look here. What's going on here? A book for planning layouts in this way, not designing it. Oh, Know Your Onions. That's a good one. That's a good one. There are a couple of books which start with something like Design for Non-Designers. That one's been around for years and years. It's part of a series. It is design as in things like this that I'm doing for non-designers, but it's also things like designing slides for non-designers. And it starts at the absolute beginning. It's completely application independent. It's just telling you how best to think about it. And then you would use whatever application you want to. So have a look at those as well. Right, halftone. I will be covering halftone next week, but your homework is to learn about halftone by watching one of my videos, which Mike has got the link to. Right, halftone, as you can see, it's made up of dots. And it's an optical illusion. It looks like smoothed out the further you are away from it. It works fantastically with colour, and that's why it works brilliantly in a cartoon. What halftone does to your colours is it reduces the complexity by reducing the number of colours. So instead of having a smooth range of 300 colours, you can get away with a lot fewer colours. That's why comics were made like that, because it would have cost far too much to print them full colour. So they reduced the number of colours and thus reduce the cost of producing them. It also reduces the complexity in terms of different sizes of dots. So some of it will have very tiny dots where there's detail, but other bits will just have bigger dots. And the third way it reduces the complexity is it will have different spacing. And as I said, it relies on an optical illusion. So that, from a far enough distance, would look like that. So it is an optical illusion. And it's great for cartoons. Traditionally, that's why they were printed that way. Now, what you need to do, Mike has found the halftone video. Excellent. You need to go and you need to watch the halftone video. Then you will have a head start for next week when I will be showing you how to make those. Now, that's probably going to be part 3 all on its own because it works differently in every application, unfortunately. Good for Graham, though. Works fantastically well in Pixelmator, the original Pixelmator. How do we view the live chat comments after the show? They do appear as normal on the video, Peter, as long as I've not edited it, which is why I don't edit it, which is why you get all the waffle at the beginning. If I have edited it, so if it was some of the older videos, like that video on halftone had no chat, it wasn't live. Some of the other ones I did edit off like 15 minutes at the beginning and then the chat disappears. But you would if you were watching one of these shows afterwards, and hello, some people will be, in the future, they're in the future watching the video, they will be able to follow the chat in exactly the same way as you are following it now. The chat replays as the video replays. So that's what we'll be looking at next week. You need to get a head start on that. I will ask questions. There will be homework. Right, but last demo of the night. This is the Jeopardy demo. Web-based photo galleries. It's a holy grail, isn't it? And I have not rehearsed this. I could not rehearse this because it needs to go on a site and it needs to go on live. It could all crash and burn, but you'd just enjoy that, wouldn't you? Right, I'm going to be showing you how to get as many photos as you like onto the web. I'll be using two things to do that. WordPress, which is a blogging platform, and it's free. Tell me you have heard of WordPress. Half the web runs on WordPress. In fact, I think it's about 80% now. WordPress has two flavours. There is hosted WordPress, where you log into wordpress.com and you blog. And there is wordpress.org, where you download it and you install it on web space that you have bought from your web space supplier. And that's what I'll be doing. I'm using a self-hosted version of it. The second thing, now I can't emphasize enough, the one that you download and install onto your web space, the actual application WordPress is free. So that is free. You may need to pay for hosting, but that is free. The second thing I'll be using, oh, Marshall doesn't like WordPress. Maybe I'll change your mind, maybe not. The second thing I'll be using is a theme, and that theme is called Divi. Now, we've been using themes from this company called Elegant Themes for years. And they had an epiphany and they brought out a theme called Divi. And it is more than a theme. It's virtually a platform. As it says, it's the most popular WordPress theme in the world. And it is a page builder. So if you have no skill in the designing pages department, you can use Divi, and you don't need to understand WordPress. Divi sits on top of WordPress as a theme. So Michael put in the links to that if you want to have a look at that later, but those are the two things I'll be using. And yes, it's very dangerous. I love demos like this. It is very dangerous, but hey, what's life without a little bit of jeopardy? So I will lose publisher. Let's just save that file and come out of publisher. And I will show you what we're doing. I'll do the whole lot. I could well regret this. I could. Right. I have a lot of photos that need to go on this site. You will remember these from last week if you were with us. Last week, I had quite a few things to put up there. I'm tidying up. I'm closing apps as I go along here. Let me just have a look in here. Oh, yes, I know what I was doing. What I'm doing is putting up the slides. Remember the slides? The 400 slides that were from a presentation that I did last week. It wasn't something people had to sit through, thankfully. It was played while we had a meal. There were 400 slides that covered 1961 to 2019. And there was, as that one there, which was just randomly picked, 1986, there was about 6 stories per year. What I need to do is get all those slides where somebody can see them, but not be overwhelmed where they've got to click next, next, next 400 times. One option was to make a video, but to have a 5-second read of each slide and a 1.5 second transition meant that the video would be 33 minutes. Who's going to sit through it? Some people will just pass by. Then they're not interested in royalty, so they'll just pass by those. So I came up with this schema. I need an index page, and then I need 6 other pages, and I'm going to have the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, all the way through to the 10s. I think we're the 10s now. Those 6 pages will each have on them all of the photos, all of the stories from each year within the decade. Now, one option I had was to go one level deeper and have 1 page per year. But that would have necessitated 58 pages for the years, plus 6 index pages, plus the main index. So Mike and I had a chat and said, yeah, don't go there. It could be done, but it would make maintenance a nightmare. So that was what we decided to go for. That's what we're after creating. So let's have a look at that. This is the site they're going on. I actually need to, now I need to come out of Keynote, because I'm actually going to show you the original file. This is the original file. These are the 400 slides. They are not even images yet. So if I open that one there, go down to 2019, down to the bottom, there you go, 403 slides. So if you're showcasing your images, you've probably already got your images somewhere, but I don't. I'm starting in here. I am going to do an export, so file export, choose images. I want all of them, and I want them as high quality JPEGs. Click on next. And the next step is when I export them, and I will export them to here rather than the desktop or it'll start uploading them. What you type in here will be what the files are called. So I don't want all the delivered for web gallery and all of that. That'll do nicely, or at least I think it will. It won't be right, but I'll do it like that. And they will export. They will literally take seconds, less than a minute. Once they're exported, I will have 403 images. But because I put Brooklyn's space 700, although that will work, it would be better if there were no spaces. There is another problem when you take things out of Keynote as well. And that is, because there's 403 slides, so I can close that file down and open up the export in Finder. So let's Finder have a think about that. It really is thinking tonight. I think we're killing it tonight. Right, it's got there. So I just need to go and well, when I say it's got there, it's now having another red link. Here's my Finder, and I'm trying to get to that local one there. And we're admiring that. Right, there it is. And it was Brooklyn 700. I've got two problems in here. One, each file name has a space in it. In fact, at the moment, I've got another problem. There's no files there. Come on. There they are. There they are. Right, so the first problem is that every file has a space in it, which I really don't want. The second problem is, if we look at that, so let's look at it closely. It's added a number, which isn't a problem, but it's a dot. And that could be a problem, especially if I'm uploading them. So these are the kind of problems that you come across after the event and you start cursing. If it's on the Mac and on Windows, it's the last dot and what follows it that's the file extension. But who knows what a web server for an underscore. But I didn't do that. And actually, I couldn't do that. Keynote would not let me do that. So what I will need to do is use an application. So I can use Better Find a Rename, or I could use Name Mangler. Wouldn't matter at all. In fact, Name Mangler might be a little bit faster for that one. If I get rid of all of this lot. I don't want that one. I need to do a find and replace. So the first thing I need to do is add in all of the images. So I'm adding them in to Name Mangler, which will enable me to rename them. I want to do a find and replace. I'm going to say to it, find the space and replace it with nothing. And if you look on the right-hand column, they now don't have a space in them. So that'll do nicely. I'll do that for a start. But before I actually run it, I will add a step. And what I will do with this one, I do want to find and replace with this one as well. I want it now to find 700 and a full stop. But I don't want it to take it away. I want the 700 there with an underscore. So it's not that difficult if you think about it. Perfect. Keynote couldn't do that. So let's rename all of those files. And that's it. They're done. So it takes seconds. And if I go in here, you've told me they're done, but that doesn't look done to me. There you go. They're done now. So it's taken a little bit of time for my system to catch up with me tonight, but they're done. So all of the files are the right name. So now I need to head into WordPress, and I need somewhere to put it. So I need a page. So I'm going to go into the back end of WordPress. This is what the website looks like behind the scenes. So it should be loading. Let's have a look. Are you thinking of loading in? You are. Good. So it will take me into the back end of WordPress. That's what it looks like. And I need to think about pages. So I'm going to go to the pages section and I need to add one. This is why I haven't been through this. This is where it gets dangerous and jeopardous. But we like jeopardy on a Saturday night, don't we? So I'm going to add a page and it needs a title. So I shall call this Brooklyn's 700. And at the moment, you can see there, it's saying you want to build, how are you going to build this page? You want to use the Divi builder. Now, Divi is the theme that we have got on this site. I don't think I'd be as happy using WordPress without Divi. Divi is so advanced, it's like a platform in its own right. So use the Divi builder, which will take us into a more visual way of building. So if you're not a coder and you don't like the back end of WordPress, it's going to give you some options where you're not starting with a blank page. So you could start from the ground up. You can access the pre-made layouts, etc., etc. What do you reckon, Mike? Should I duplicate a page we've already got? Have we got one that would look half decent, or shall I just start from scratch?
Start from scratch.
Oh, more jeopardy. It's never ending. Right, let's say start building. Right, what I do have is the branding at the top, and I have the footer at the bottom. Other than that, I have nothing. Now, if you've ever tried WordPress, you will take one look at this and you'll say, wow, because to do this without Divi would be a living nightmare. So the first thing we have to think about is, what do we want at the top? Well, I think I want it full width at the top, and I think I want it to say Brooklyn 700. So I'll put in a new row. A row is going to hold whatever content I decide to put in it. So what content do I want to put in it? Well, starting with an image would be a good idea. So I'll do that. There is an image. And I need to choose one of the images from the presentation, which hopefully I can do from here. It wants me to drag and drop a file. Or I can go and select a file. I think I'll go and select a file. We'll point it towards the folder that I've just created here. And I will have a look at what these images look like. So if I squish my dialog box down a little bit, are you going? Go on. Oh, what are you doing? I know you're working. There we go. So what that will give me is a preview at the bottom. And I think the one I want for this is that one there. So I'll say open, and it will upload that image. There it is, going into my media gallery. And I can say, use that one. That's the one I want it to use. So it's put it there. You can see it even appearing in the page behind. It's that good. So far, so good. So I'm going to click OK on that. See, I'm not coding this page. I'm actually building it. So I want that at the top of the page. The next thing I need to think about is, what do I want underneath it? Now, there's lots of plus buttons and they're all flying about. The first one is going to add in another chunk of the page within the row that I added. So the first thing I added was a row. The next thing I added was an image, and it was full width. In making the decision what I add next, I need to think about, I probably need some text that explains what it is and when it happened. What do I want that to look like? Do I want it to be as wide as the image, or do I want it narrower? What do we think, Mike? Do we want it as wide as the image, or do we want it narrower? The decision there is going to depend on how we think most people will read it. Obviously, on my 27-inch iMac, not going to look great if it's full width, but most people read it on a phone or an iPad. I think we'd get away with full width. And if we would, we don't need another row to do it. We can just add more content underneath, which is the grey plus. So the green will add a row, but the grey will add some content. We will add a new module. And this one will have text. We'll just put our text in it. So I'll choose text, and it says your content goes here, etc., etc. So I'll put in there, need to add some explanation of the event. So that I will go back and do later, and there is the content behind me. Now the next thing I need to add is some images, 6 of them, which are going to link to the decades. So what should they look like? Do we want those indented, Mike? Trying to think what it would look like on an iPad. Possibly not. Did we decide on 3 across?
Yeah.
We did. In that case, I'm going to need a new row. So I need a new green block. Because when I choose a green block, it will let me decide on a layout like this. I picked the first one, full width. But now Mike's decided we're going to have 3 images and they're going to go across. So I will choose the one with 3 images. If I wanted a gap either side, I'd choose the one with 5 and I'd leave the end 2 blank. But if we're going full width, I'll go for the 3 there. That gives me 3 content blocks and all I need to do is fill them. This is easy, isn't it? Right, let's go up here. I need an image. An image is going in there. The image that's going in it, I need to go and select it. It's going to be the 1960s, which is one of these. There's the 1960s. Fantastic. And OK that. OK that. And there's my first image. My next one, obviously, is also going to be an image. So this time I'm filtering it for image. And again, I go and choose an image. Now I'm looking for the 70s. And I have no idea where it is, but that's 67, so keep going. That's 69, getting warm. 69, oh, 1970s. So that was number 77. And wait for it to load, and then click the upload. Click the tick, I'm in. And I just need to go rinse and repeat for all 6 decades. So I'll go and find the 80s. So uploading. Luckily, I put a date on each one, so I know it's going to be more than 100 and odd. It's 377, oh, 83, back a bit, 82, 80, Postman Pat. Oh, that was 81, so back to 80, and there should be an 80s. No, it's going to be one of these. There's the 80s. You might be wondering why I didn't take the time and rename the files. And I didn't because, you know, rename them 1970s, 1960s, 1980s. I'd be there forever. I decided to just go with what's there. It's not something that I need to think about changing in the future. It was a point-in-time presentation. If we ever use it again in the future, then to be honest, I would recreate what I'm doing now as well. So I won't bother making any others, or should I add the others, Mike? Can I do an image search here and get, what's the next one? The 90s, isn't it? Let me go and get the 90s. Now, fear not, when we get onto this, 90s, 86, nearly there, that's a blue one. No, nearly. Oh, somewhere near here, the 90s. There we go. Hopefully it'll put that in the right place. We are not going to be uploading all 400 slides, taking this long. No. It's going to get a lot faster once we've built this first page. That's the good news. So let's go and get the noughties. The noughties. So if that was there, we're looking in the high 200s at least. 2001. There we go, the 2000s. And one more and we are done. We have a page. Now, making sure that you are all still awake, what will each of these images need to have done to them to work? Which I won't actually be able to do right at this second. Have a think about that. Let's have a look where we were. Oh, look at that. That was the 2002 10s. 2005. 10, back a bit, 9, 2010, back 1. There we go. So I've got the 6 blocks that I need. Any idea what each of those images would need that I am looking at now? Because how we are there, that page is pretty much done. That's nice, it's done. So I will save that page. So I'm clicking at the bottom and I'm saving it as a draft. Nobody got any idea what I would need to do to that yet. Never mind. I'll leave you thinking about that. I could actually publish that page. Hyperlinks. Peter's there. He's there. I do. Each one of these needs to link to the index page for that decade. I can't do that yet because they don't exist. So I will need to return to there. But at the moment, that's not a problem. I've saved it. So saved as a draft. It's not actually published yet, but it's saved. The next thing I may want to do is open up another one here. Is the page responsive? The page is indeed responsive. Divi is completely responsive. If you go and have a look at my blog, elainegiles.co.uk, and you look at the blog at the bottom, you'll see that it shrinks down to 1 column on a phone and 2 on an iPad, 3 on an iPad if you tip it sideways. So the whole thing is completely responsive. Right, so I'm going into the pages again. And I'm making a new page, so add a new page. This one's going to be for the 60s. So I'll put here Brooklyn's. Oh, it even corrected it for me. Good. 700, the 1960s. Right, excellent. And I need to use the Divi Builder again. I don't want to do this by hand. It'd be horrible by hand. Now, it's not going to look like the other page because that was an index page. So I'll start from scratch. But what do we want this to look like? Well, I do want it to start with a wide top on it. And I want that to be an image. And the image that I want it to be is already uploaded. It's the 1960s one. So instead of uploading it, I choose an image that's already there. And there's my image. Do we want any text under that, Mike? I'm not at all sure we need it.
Don't think we do.
I don't think we do either. So we don't need to add a new row. We need to add another element. So add a module. What are we adding this time? Now you can see all of the things you can add. There's a lot of them. What would it be? Well, a gallery would work nicely, wouldn't it? Because we want it to be all of the images for the 60s. So we have an option. We've created the gallery. It's even popped in some images behind, some random ones. Random from this site, but random nevertheless. That's half of Mike. We need some gallery images. So I'm going to go and select some files. So back in here, this is the bit where we make it much faster. We don't need that one because that's already up there, but we do need 1961. So that's number 4. I then need to go and find image, which was around 70 something, wasn't it? I believe it was that one. There we go. It was 76. My very favourite TV programme, The Clangers. And back to 4. So I've selected all of the images for the 60s. And this is where you start to bring in the speed of it, because I'm not uploading those individually. I'm just going to click open. And it is going to go away and have a think about it and start adding 73 images to the library. Now, it's not just uploading them to your website. It's actually going to add them to the gallery itself. Now, there's a couple of caveats with this. The images that you're looking at there, well, it's having a rare old think about it in the top right corner. It's up to number 12. The images you see there are ones that we have previously uploaded. And they were photographs. Some of them were landscape, some of them were portrait. The best thing you can do when you're uploading images is take away all of the meta off them. If you don't, WordPress tries to understand it and it doesn't do the best job in the world. So strip it out, just lose it. So what's happening at the moment is it's uploading those images. Now, it doesn't look like they're appearing. So you're not seeing them being added one by one. You'll just have to trust me that they are actually being added in the background. But they're not just uploading them to the library. What's also happening is the images that are behind, right at the bottom of the screen, where you can see half of Mike and somebody with an Apple Watch, it is also at the point of uploading the images, uploading them into that gallery as well. Now, these images were anywhere between about 140k up to nearly a meg. The size depended on the content. So those images that you see across the top there, where you've got Brooklyn's News and Brooklyn 700, they are very small images because the majority of the pixels are either blue or white. If you have images that are black, they're very tiny. But the photographs below, the more colours that are in an image, the bigger the file size of the image. So what we're uploading here, although they all have blue backgrounds, and they all have white text, and they all have the Brooklands logo in the lower right, they also have a photograph on the left-hand side. And that is what bumps the size up. I will quickly, because we're getting there, show you that that one there is 435. It's having a think about it. Okay, do you know what? I'm not going to show you that, because if I do, oh, good, there you go. Have a think about it. I don't want to miss the thing behind. Oh, please stop. That will finish in the background now. It's not letting me stop. There you go. So that image is almost 500k. Now I need you to go away. And you're not going away. There we go. Right. So what's happened in here is it's uploaded that. They are somewhere in here. They should be. So I will just hit select and hope, fingers crossed, it's strutting its stuff in the background. And there they all go. So what we're looking at now is the editable area. So I'm scrolling through those in there if I want. There they all are. In the background, see here, it's populating the gallery. So if I just click OK and move down into here, I have a gallery. I have lots and lots of pages on my gallery as well. There's page 2 and page 3. I've got too many pages. I can only see 4 images in my gallery. That's not good. I'm going to go back into my gallery. This is being my gallery. And I'm going to make some changes to it. So in the design, in the layout, I do want it as a grid. I do want the thumbnails as landscape. What I'm looking for is how many I've got. Where are you? Is that under advanced? No, you're not. Where are you? You are hiding them from me. Tell you what, let me search the options here. I need... There you go. I type number. It comes up with image count. And it's got... And there's my credit cards. That's not helpful, is it? Oh, that was helpful. That's one password being far more helpful than is needed. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to put 40 in there. That'll do nicely. No, I don't want that. Go away. Right. So I've got an image count of 40, which should mean I've got a lot fewer pages. A lot fewer pages. There we go. Now, the other thing is I don't particularly want these letters at the bottom either. They are not helpful at all. If I go into there, let me go back into it. So back up here to find the cog. There's the cog. What I need this time, so I'm searching the options again, is captions. There's the caption. Show title and caption, and I don't want that, so I'm turning that off. And then clicking OK. Now it's starting to pull together and look a lot better. Down to it, I only have 2 pages. Because in there I've got 72 images, and there they all are. Do I need anything else on this page? There's a question for you. Do I need anything else on this page? I will at this point save that So I'll save that for a start, save draft. So it's not published yet, but I've saved the page. Do I need anything else? And when I say anything else, I don't mean in terms of the images in here. I've got all the images I need. I don't need anything at the top there. I could put some text in if I wanted to, but there isn't really much that I want to put in there. But what else might somebody want to do when they are looking at this page? So have a practical think about it. What's the next thing they might want to do? Look at the 70s, or maybe they want to jump to the 90s or the noughties. What I've got in here is navigation through the images from the 60s, but I don't have any navigation to take them to the 80s, the 90s, the noughties. So what I can do is I can put in another element underneath there. Could each decade be a carousel? It could. I'm going to do separate pages though. So I'll end up with separate pages. What I really need to do is put some navigation in the bottom. Now I could put it in as text. What I might be tempted to do though is actually put a column in, and I'm going to have a look at it and think about it. So you're quite right, Neil, go to the next decade. By looking at the row, what might I want in there? Well, I've got the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties and the 10s. So 6, and luckily I have there something that could do columns with 6 in. That would give me the scope to put text in it, or I could put an image in it. I could do whatever I want, and I've got 6 discrete blocks to do it in. That sounds perfect. So I'll put one of those in. At the moment, I'm just going to put text in because there is a good reason for this. I will put text, so I'm filtering for text. And I'm just going to put in there, where it's got my content, 1960s. And okay, I'm not even going to worry about formatting it. I'm not going to need to. What I want you to think about while I'm putting this text in here for the navigation is, what's the problem with this once they've gone to the next decade? Think it through. What's the problem going to be with it? It all needs to be active. I need the pages, that's for certain. It's the 90s. The next one. I'm doing all this by hand. Now, somebody pointed out earlier, Marshall, that he's a fan of static sites because this is a lot of fiddling around and then you've got to maintain it. So what could we do that a static site couldn't do in WordPress? Now, WordPress itself, that's not helpful. I'm looking for text. Back buttons versus the back in the browser. I could add back buttons, in which case I'd need to add them into the columns, and I've only got 6 as an option. So that's one thing I could think about. I'm thinking more in terms of, you're seeing me do all this work here. What's going to happen when I'm on the page for the 1970s? I'm going to have to do it all again. Now, if we think about what we're looking at here, these aren't needing to be links. They are going to need to be links. They should probably, the text here, if I'm honest, be centered. That would make more sense as well. And then they're lined up within their blocks. That's perfect. It will need to be on all of the gallery pages. Excellent, Neil. So copy the same elements Peter's suggesting. Well, I have a problem doing either of those at the moment. If I try copying what I've got here right now, there's something fundamental missing. What's fundamentally missing is the navigation. I cannot put links into the pages because the pages don't exist. I could work out what I want to call them and then do all of that, but it'd be far easier to do it later. But that means I'm left in a quandary with this. What on earth do I do with it? Because even if this one was perfect and I copied and pasted this navigation at the bottom, great. But what if I decide that that needs to be bigger? I've got the space to make it bigger, so I could make those headings. They're not going to match. I'm going to have 6 pages that look like that, and any change I make on any of those pages is not going to ripple through to the other pages. Now, that could have been what Marshall meant when he was talking about it becomes a maintenance and security nightmare. That I've got this page and it's beautiful, but it doesn't look like the one next to it. But this is where WordPress can't help you with that, but Divi can. That block that we've got there, so this block that's the green block, that's a row. And I appreciate, if I was watching this, I'd be like, oh, it's going green and there's brown and there's black and then there's blue at the bottom. I'm trying to hold the mouse steady. Believe me, this does actually help you. This block here that's bordered by the green bit, that bit there, I definitely need that on the other pages. The other pages, incidentally, need to look exactly like this one does. And you've just seen it's taken me, it's not taken forever, and given the layout and how many images I've uploaded, not bad. Not bad. But more time than I want to spend on the next one and the next one. And what if I was doing 15 decades? Wouldn't be happy at all. Right, the first thing I'm going to want to do is concentrate on this navigation. Basically, wherever it appears in my site, I want it to look the same and function the same. And there's a way to do that. If I go into its row settings, now you've got to use the copy page function. I could do that, Peter. I could make a master page of this and I could do that. What I'd have to be thinking about with that is it's only a starting point. Any changes I make to it, not going to work. But if I go into here, and I am now frantically looking for the right bit, it is in here, isn't it, Mike? Can I do that with a row? Where's it disappeared to? Let me go into the search and do that. I'm not seeing that. Something is not right here, Mike. Let's go into here. Ooh. Okay, so I don't want to be in the green bit. I must need to be... Oh, good grief. That's not good. If I need to... I'm just testing something here, because if I need to do it this way, that's going to be a nightmare in itself. Oh, surely you can do it the other way that I want to do it, which is the green way. I want to go into here. There we go. That's what they've moved it. Don't move things on me. Basically, the 6 columns with the years in, I need to be available on all the pages and automatically update. If you've ever coded manually, that's known as an include. But in Divi, it's known as saving a row to the library. So I'm going to hit save to the library. And what is this? This is Brooklyn's 700 navigation. Now, if I save it, it will enable me to have it available and insert it wherever and whenever I like. That's fantastic. But if I put a tick in the magic box, whenever I make a change to it, it will update on every page in the site. Simple as that. Now, I could create a category for it. Do you have a preference for that, Mike, in terms of organising it? No. Do you want it as navigation or... Let's create a section called navigation, a category, and save to library. Peter, so it becomes a master element which will ripple through each page when the master is changed. Absolutely. Absolutely it will. So save to library, that toddles off to the library. And now, when I hover around it, it's lime green. Lime green, as opposed to that other green, and I'll admit they're fairly similar. That's the other green. Let's have a look at that. There is a difference, though. The lime green means it's a global library item. That's important. And that's all I actually need to do at this point. I'll point out to you, I still don't know what the pages are going to be called for that. But it doesn't matter. I can just leave it like that. Because when I've got 6 pages or 26 pages, I can come back in, edit it, everything will get updated. But I still have one problem. That's great as far as it goes. I can save a draft of that. In fact, I could actually publish it, and if you had the URL, you would be able to see it. So let me do that. Let me actually publish it. Okay. I have absolute... I'm going to edit the visual builder. Exit the visual builder, sorry. And there's the URL. So do you want to type that in, Mike? It's Brooklands-700-the-60s. You can actually go and see that page live right now. Navigation won't work, but what will work is my gallery will work. So as I go to the clangers, and why are the clangers there? The clangers are in the wrong place, but all of the others, I'm just using the arrow keys. It wouldn't matter if I went across here like that. Now my people can go as fast as they like and see them all. Excellent. So that's working. The clangers, wrong place. So I definitely need to edit this and start working with it more. I am pushing this for time, but I'm getting there. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is go back in here. I have no idea why that has happened before, so I'm assuming it's some kind of bug. That is the last image that should be there, not the first. It's image 76, if you see. But I can drag that, I do believe. Are you dragging the whole thing? What I'll do is I will go into it, and in here, I will grab it, and I will drag it. So I'm going to drag it over there, and I'm going to scroll down. On my iMac, this would be beautiful. I might be able to persuade it. You see it moving? If I just hang on to that and let it get to the bottom, and I would say it would be easier if my screen was sized its normal size. We're up to 66. We're nearly there. Gotta love that panda. We're nearly there. There we go. I think it's that one. The moon landings were 69. They definitely were. Right, 15th of November, and that's the 16th of November. So that one needs to go before the clangers. And we're done with that. That is right. They are in the right order. Okay, so we know that that is perfect. And we know that at the bottom we have a global library item that will automatically update it. We can even put a link on that now. We have a page name. That page name, I know it's no use having that there, give or take. But if I go into the 60s, because we're already on the 60s page, but there's the text for the 60s, and I can actually put a link on it. So that's the URL, that's the text to be displayed, and I can put a title there if I want. Brooklands, I can't spell Brooklands, can I? 700, the 1960s. Okay, and okay it. And okay. And now I have a link. Great. So that's fine so far as it goes. I will save it. That will automatically ripple through. If you have visited that page and you refresh, you should now see the clangers are in their rightful place and the 60s is now a link. I still have a problem. In terms of saving me time working, I still have a problem. And that problem is I need another 5 of these pages, and I would like that to take me 5 seconds, not 5 hours. Luckily, Divi can help you with that as well. And I'm just thinking, Mike, where on earth they have put that? Is this a whole page? That blue one's a section, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah.
And I can save the section to a library. Aha! So I'm going to go to add to a library, and I'm going to have a layout name of decade. It's actually, let's see if I can spell it right this time. Brooklands 700 decade. Is it a global item or not? Give me a quick yes or no in the chat. Global items are automatically updated. I change one, it changes them all. Is this a global one or not? It doesn't need to be added to category. In fact, I'm wondering, Mike, if there's a better way of doing this. Where's the page libraries? We'll stick with this at the moment. I've not got a yes or a no yet. What's the lag like on YouTube? Peter's saying, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Any more? Anybody else think different? What do you think, Mike? Or do you know the answer?
No.
Mike's sticking with Peter. Mike says no. Peter's quite right. So's Mike. If I make this a global item, I'll end up with 6 copies of the 60s or 70s or 80s. As I change one, they will all change. I do not need to do that. I will just save that as it is to the library. So I have a whole section up there, and the section should be wrapped around the whole thing. It looks like it is. Excellent. So I'm going to head back. We've done 2 pages so far, but I am going to head back and we're going to make page 3. All the pages. Now, I could clone a page in here and use a WordPress feature, but you know, why do that? I will add a new one and I will use the Divi way of working. So I'm working exactly the same as I would have been. So Brooklyn 700, the 1970s. And I'll use the Divi Builder. So I'm showcasing with you the power of the Divi Builder. The power of the Divi Builder is I'll build a page from scratch. I could browse my layouts, but I didn't save it as a layout. I'm going to build from scratch. And I should be able to insert a section, shouldn't I? If I go up here, I don't want to save it to the library. I want to load it in from the library. Where is my load it in from the library gone, Mike? Do I have it up here? Expand. Mike, find it for me, because they've moved stuff. They've updated this and they've moved stuff. I want to load it in from the library. Why can't I load it in from the library? I would have thought it was in there. It's not in my section settings. Where is it? I don't want to duplicate it either. I don't want to save it to the library, nor do I want to bin it. What if I just add another one? There we go. I can add it from the library, and there is my Brooklands bit. So I will add that in. I will go back to that top one, and now I can bin it because that's a blank one and it won't let me edit it. There we go. Now it's a starting point. My navigation's there though. It's a starting. So the very first thing I need to do is to go into here and change the 60s to the 70s, which is already in here. There's the 70s. So that's already done. Boom, that's up to date. But I've got this gallery and it's got loads of pictures in it. Oh no. But I can go into the module settings, so I'm looking at the images. And in here, can I just delete the lot? I can add extra ones, as you see down here. What I'm thinking is, could I just delete the lot? I wonder. Let's have a look. Reset images. That'll do. I'm assuming that means none. Excellent. Add from a gallery, but they're not uploaded. I need to go get them. Select the files. We were up to 76, I remember. And we already had 77 uploaded, because that's the 70s. So there's 1970. So we're going to need to go back to 78. And we need right up to there. So image 78 up to where we are. Open those. Away it goes. It starts uploading them. The 63 this time. It is adding them to the library, so it's doing exactly the same as it did last time. It's going to take probably a minute or so. If you've got any questions, sling them in. Good night, Graham. Oh, a Belgian bun. That's a new one. We're thinking about fruit. So when this is uploaded, the gallery will be up to date. We will also have a page. So while it's thinking about it, I can go and do some work. Even though that's not finished, I can go and get that link that we put on the 6th. And I can go down to the bottom of the page and I can edit the 70s and I can put the link in. Now, I know what you're thinking. You don't have the link yet. No, I don't. But where that says 60s, I can just change it to 70s. Hello, Deb. Oh, you've missed loads. You need to catch up. But you're here now, and we've not quite finished. It's an epic tonight. It's an epic. So I've changed the 70s. A protein bar? Oh, Peter, you need more than that. So the 70s has been updated. I'm going to save that page. Head back to this page for the 70s. Oh, it doesn't like it. It's got upset. It struggled with an image. It didn't like image 84. I have no idea why it didn't like image 84. I will fix that one later. It didn't like 84. Okay, I've made a note of that. But it is carrying on. I wonder which image 84 was. I bet it was a political one that it didn't like. Let's have a look. Oh, it wasn't. It was the Open University. 3rd of January 1971. The BBC Open University broadcast began. So I don't know why it didn't like 84. Nothing wrong with 84. It wasn't even a very big image. But at least it's giving me the error, so I know what's wrong with it. So we're halfway there with the images. It's probably going to take about another minute and a half. Remember what it's doing. It's doing two things. It's uploading the images to the library, and it's also populating that image gallery in WordPress at the same time. And I will need to fix that error. But what I've done in the interim is I have gone in, well, that's doing one thing, and I have done another, which is I have updated the navigation on the 60s page. What we're hoping is, when we look at the 70s page, that too has been updated. That was the whole point. We have a very nice starting point page, and we have an updatable navigation. We have the Holy Grail. I'd like to say, I think WordPress works well when you half think the way it thinks, and also when you've got the supporting applications and code to make it work the way you need it to work. I have coded manual pages. I don't think I'd like to go back and do it again. WordPress wasn't all there in its original format, believe you me. We had a WordPress site in 2006 and we call it Held Together with String and Goodwill. It was not good. All right, let's put those in. Where's my mouse pointer gone? Over you come. So I need to sort out image 84, which is somewhere down here. It was 1971, I believe. Well, I don't think all images have got errors on them, unless you're lying to me. I think it's just we're stressing it out as it's starting to load as it goes, I would say. So we'll OK on that and let it strut its stuff there as it's loading them in there. They're coming in, so that's up to date. I will go here and save a draft of that. And I'm looking for one specific thing to happen. And I am wondering why it is not happening, Mike. Why is it not happening? I am doing a save on that page and going back to this page. It's still loading in. Why hasn't my 70s got a link on it? Naughty, naughty. But while thinking about it, I'm going to publish that page. And then, if Mike puts a link in for that, you should be able to go see that page too. And if we do that, so I have published it, and I come out of the Visual Builder, then I see the page, and with a bit of luck, there is my link to the 70s, but more importantly, there's my link to the 60s. So my links have updated across pages, and that page, once I'd done the second page, took the longest thing was uploading the images. So, epic demo. Epic demo went on forever. And obviously I've got the 80s, 90s, noughties and 10s to do, which I will do, but you've got the basics of how that works. So let's whip back into here and wrap up. There we go. So that was what I built. I built the index page and I did the 60s and I did the 70s. But we added in a global item, which will be across all 6 of those pages. And we added a starting point, so I just create a page and then add my content to it. Fabulous, fabulous. And guess what? We'll be back next week. Oh, we will. Friday next week, Friday. You have homework, you know that. If you've joined us late and you've missed it, you have homework. You do. What is Brooklyn? Seen it in a few of your demos. Okay, it is a circle of a group that Mike is a member of. In fact, this year, Mike is president, which means I'm lady president. They don't know what's hit them. That's why they're getting a lot of tech. So we meet and we have lots of social events. We raise money for charity, and with Mike being the president, he gets to choose the charity. So we've chosen the guide dogs. And that particular meal that you've seen the photos from there, I think the photos for that are actually online, aren't they, Mike? That was the one I baked the cake for. I decided to do the slides because we've got people there who are in their 90s. And I said to Mike, it would be really nice to put up just little pen pics of events that have happened since the group was formed, which was April 1961. And it was so funny when I got the slides going, because Mike said it's going to take you ages. And I said, just leave me with it, it'll be fine. And it took a while. But I said, this is real. This is what people try and do with it. And when you try and do something like that, you learn quite a lot about what does work and what doesn't work, and things that you think, well, obviously that would work, and you try it and it doesn't. So last week I showed 7 features that I was ever so thankful that they were there. Things like the master pages would have been a nightmare without. Things like the collapse all and expand all. So doing something like that isn't just for a demo. There's nothing worse than what I call a blue square demo. A blue square demo is, here's a blue square. Oh, and here's another one. That's how copy and paste work. And you're like, great, now I need to do X, Y, Z with it. And that's a lot more complicated than having that blue square there and having another one over there. When it's real, you hit roadblocks in software. So for me, although it took a while, it was worth it because as I'm doing it, I'm like, whoa, that should work and it doesn't there. And this and that. So I learned quite a lot doing that. There is a Brooklands Road. Brooklands Road, my dentist is near Brooklands Road. Brooklands itself is an area of Sale. It's just to the east of Sale. Wasn't there a Brooklands racetrack? People have talked about the Brooklands racetrack, but it is an area of Sale, and the group is called Brooklands because it's based on the area. So the groups within this society are based on location. So there's a Manchester group and there's a Longridge group that we go and visit, and our group is called Brooklands. The 196 that you see, 196.com, each of the groups has a number. So the Manchester one was the first group, and they're known as Manchester 1. The Brooklands one was the 169th group, 196th group. So they're 196, and that was what Mike took as the name of the radio station, Brooklands 196. We are actually not far from Timperley. We are very close to Timperley. If you know the area, you will probably know the Pelican Pub. And from the Pelican, you will probably know Eastway and Woodhouse Lane. And we are very close to Woodhouse Lane, the roundabout at the bottom of Woodhouse Lane. We have an episode of MacBites called Untethered in Timperley. You need to hear that one. You'll find it on the site, Untethered in Timperley. That was our boy, and he was untethered in Timperley. It was funny. It was funny, bless him. Right, so any questions? Any questions? Next week we have Halftone. So something for Deb maybe there. We're doing Halftone, all of Halftone. There's a lot to it. That was your homework. You need to go and watch a video that I did about Superdog. So Mike's put the link in. Mike will find the link for Superdog. Yes, I think, Neil, you might have heard of Pinkie Park. We're near Pinkie Park, which is also known as, what's it called now?
Woodhays Park.
Woodhays Park. But locally it's known as Pinkie Park. We're near there, which is handy. That's where we take all the dogs we borrow. We actually have a dog with us at the moment, but she's asleep. I threatened to bring her in, but she's not interested. She's asleep. She's had a whale of a time. She's a Samoyed. She's called Lola. She's 3.5 years old, nearly 4, and she's with us for the night. So we'll have her for 2 days. You are very welcome, Neil. Very, very welcome. So do we have any questions? Now, a lot of you last week said you had no idea there was an email. There's an email. If you go there, you will get freebies and the first news of upcoming events and courses, etc. I have courses too. So we will be looking at halftone next week. What else will we be looking at? What did I say we're looking at? Oh, I've got that video that I've yet to edit of installing that hub and why it was necessary. That became an epic job. That became an epic job. I thought it was going to be a simple matter of going in, plugging it in, done. No, 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 no. I got in there and I had cables that you'll laugh at this if you know your cables. I had Firewire 800 cables that I swear I have not used in the last 8 years. And I'm pulling it thinking, what's this attached to? Because in living memory, I have no idea what I've got that would be on the other end of it. And guess what? When I pulled it out, nothing was on the other end of it. Was there any use having that cable sat there? Let me tell you, no. Because the computer that was sat there did not have a Firewire 800 port on it. I don't own a computer that has a Firewire 800 port on it. So why did I have a cable in there? I have no idea. What do I edit my videos in? Final Cut Pro. I do have Final Cut Pro. I must admit, I do not edit my videos in it anymore. I used to, and I used to have the version that came with the 15 stone box full of manuals. And back then, I did edit in it. I edit in either Camtasia or ScreenFlow, and my rationale is I don't need to render the video. Final Cut's fine once it's rendering all the time, and the other two don't need to render at all. So most of my video is screen recording, which at the moment I'm screen recording, so I've got a perfect quality copy. That is recording both in Camtasia and ScreenFlow. Why, I hear you ask? Why would you stress your machine like that? Because one or other usually fails. It would not be uncommon to lose a recording because one or other of them has failed. Most of the time when they're running together, they play quite happily with each other and I end up with 2 recordings. I have been known to record with 3 applications, in which case I'd use one of my others. I have about 5 or 6 screen recording apps. The reason I would do that is you can only record one screen at a time, and if I want to record all 3, I need 3 apps to do it. I'm hardcore, aren't I? But when I've got video from my phone, it might seem a bit odd to load it into what you may think of as a screen recording app, but they are more than capable and they are very fast when it comes to video editing. Oh, what's the podcast? What's the podcast? Share it. We did an episode on publishing a podcast, all that's involved from the point of it being edited, but we didn't do editing. What app do you use to edit your audio, or is it a video podcast? We've done audio podcasts. I've edited video. Obviously, I do all my screencasts video. I probably edit more video now than audio. That's interesting. Just do the audio tracks. We use an application. We've been through the lot, believe you me. When we started, we used GarageBand. We moved from GarageBand to Soundtrack Pro. Soundtrack Pro was fabulous. They binned it. It was an accompaniment to Final Cut Pro, and it was fantastic. As the name implies, it was for soundtracks of movies. And because of that, it was perfect for editing audio from video. But when they brought out Final Cut Pro 10, they binned it. So I moved from that to Logic Pro. I moved from Logic Pro to Adobe Audition. We had a sprinkling of Amadeus Pro and Audacity in there. But we've settled, thankfully. We've settled on Hindenburg, and it is fabulous. Hindenburg it's a very unusual audio editor. When I said to Mike, I really fancy trying this, but it's not cheap. I think it was around the $300 mark because I went for the Pro one. You don't need the Pro one, but I went for the Pro one. The other one's around the $80 mark, which is much more affordable. But the stuff that's in the Pro one was, I thought would be useful. And if there's an option, I tend to go for the Pro one. I could listen to equine veterinary stuff. I don't have a horse. I did ride a horse once. First time I rode a horse, it was the first lady policewoman on a horse. And it was her daughter, who was a friend of mine at school, and they had a stables with horses in it, and she took me down there. And she said, "You've ridden, haven't you?" And I went, "No. A donkey on the beach when I was 3. She went, "Don't tell my parents." I said, "Fair enough." So her mum brought this horse out. This horse was massive. She got sat on this horse. And I do this, do that. And I did it. And she went, "Oh, you can tell you've ridden before." I was about 14, 15 at the time, and I hadn't ridden since a donkey on the beach. So, yeah, I could listen to that, not a problem. Yes, Hindenburg. Hindenburg's worth looking at, even if you don't go for the pro version. Be warned, it is not like any other audio editing application you have ever seen. I said to Mike, I really want to try this, but I'm going to leave it until towards Black Friday. And my logic was, if I leave it till then, when the trial runs out, I could maybe get a deal on Black Friday. So I installed it about the end of October, and I started working with it. And I'd heard about it, but I'd not actually tried it until that point. And I remember saying to Mike, I think I tried it for about a day, and I said, "I'm really disappointed. I don't know why people rave over this thing." And Mike was like, "I'm surprised." He said, "Yep, so am I." But I had the trial, and I thought, I'm going to persist with it, and I need to understand why people rave over this thing. And once I understood the rationale of how the application worked, I just fell in love with it. We did this year go to a podcast conference in Birmingham in February. And the guy who wrote the app, well, he designed it. His coders wrote it, but he designed it, was there. And he was doing a presentation. So we got there really early, and he was sat at his stall. And I said to Mike, "I'm going over there." And Mike said, "What, with a shopping list of what you want?" I said, "Yes." So I went over and said, "Hi, I use Hindenburg." The guy said, "Oh, that's good. Take a seat." I thought you might regret that. So I got out my list of things I'd like fixing and things I'd like adding, and we spent 40 minutes going through it. Then he did a demonstration in the afternoon of about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I worked through that with him. And then when I got back to the office, updates started coming through to this app, and the updates were the stuff I'd asked for, and I was loving it. So I can honestly say Hindenburg is great. It is not for editing music. It is dedicated to editing the spoken word. And the features that it has for editing the spoken word are superlative. For instance, well, I'll show you. I'll do an edit of a show and show you. But one of the things that's useful is, imagine that let's have a look what you were saying you were doing. You do video editing for the ads and promos. If you imagine that you've got an ad to put in, say you've got 3 ads to put in an hour-long podcast, and you've got the ads and they're ready, then you'll probably have them somewhere on your file system or something. And then you've got to remember to add them in, and where are those files? And I go and get them and all of that. The way Hindenburg works, you can just drag stuff in, and you could then put each ad in what I would call a bin, but they call them a clipboard. But basically it's a holding area. So your ads could be in the holding area. And when you get 20 minutes into it, you need an advert, you reach across to the bin, you drag and drop, you're done. It's fabulous. It is really, really good. But I think it's a slow burn when you start it, unless you happen to have somebody who knows it and is really keen on it and can show you the stuff that will save you acres of time. Oh, I could do that. So yeah, I can slot that in. I mean, we wanted to fit this in because we've got some other stuff, why we've gone long. We're into the 3rd hour now, but it's all right. I'm wrapping up shortly. So we'll add that. We've actually had other people asking about podcast editing. Podcasting's huge at the moment. So yeah, we can certainly do that. We could do a MacBites. That would mean doing a show, Mike. We could think about that, couldn't we? Mm. I also edit a couple of other shows as well, which are shorter, which would probably work great for a demo. So I can certainly do that. Hindenburg is easier than Final Cut. It's a lot easier, but you do need to understand why it works the way it works. I would liken it to many years ago. I used WordPerfect, and I loved WordPerfect, and it made total sense to me. I had used it for 6-7 years, and it started to die, unfortunately. I probably used it nearly 8 years at that point. And I said to Mike, the Windows version's not great. And Windows is the way forward. I'd used it on DOS. I'm going to have to tackle Word. And Mike went, good luck with that. And I started using Word and I said, this is ridiculous. This doesn't work right. And that doesn't work right. And what I was saying was, it doesn't work the way I think it should work. So what I did was I threw everything out of the window and thought, right, sit down and start from scratch. And I'm not interested in, here's a series of steps, just do that. No. There's the series of steps. Now show me why. Why am I doing it that way? Why is that way better than the way I was doing it? When I sat down like that, and the archetypal example I give is WordPerfect had an A footer and a B footer, and it was all logical. It worked great. If you had a table of contents at the beginning of a book, it would have Roman numerals, and the rest of the book would have standard numbers. It worked great. And it was very difficult to do that in Word by comparison to WordPerfect, until I learnt about sections, at which point I could have any number of different numbering schemes and the whole thing would just hold together perfectly. Once I understood it, it made a lot of sense and it was logical. And Hindenburg's like that. I mean, one of the things that we always do with audio is you would make a selection and you would delete it. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that, my command backspace isn't working, delete isn't working. Oh, for crying out loud, how do I get rid of something? And for ages, I was cutting it. That did work. It got rid of it. So I just kept cutting it. I then started more tutorials and digging deeper, and there's actually a way to do it. It's just the X key. And I thought, well, why don't you just make it like every other app? And when you think it through, why isn't it like every other app? Because command backspace is 2 hands. And X is 1. So I don't have to move my hand off the mouse. So I think if you have things explained to you in that way, it's X on its own because it will click with you. And that was what was missing at the beginning to me. There wasn't really a handheld, hold my hand through an edit tutorial. There were lots of tutorials, but they kind of jumped in the middle. And I needed something that went from the beginning and told me why. And once I've got a why, it's in my head. B's for blade. So it's obvious. And then I can publish with this and I can do that. And everything's fast. And it makes the difference between getting the job done and not getting the job done. So, Mike, make a note. Editing a podcast. We need to sort a podcast out. Right, so that's it for this week then, thankfully, as we head up to the top of the hour, which is midnight our time. No idea what time it is your time, and we've even lost Graham. Graham had to head off, but he did tell us what he was having to eat. I also saw a question earlier, which I didn't get a chance to answer. So let me answer that question, and then we will head off and have something to eat. It was a question about... let's have a look. It was before we started that. It was from Peter. Where did you learn about design and layout? I have no idea and need to pick it up. I started design on a Commodore Amiga in 88 when I got my Commodore Amiga. It had an app called something Colour. And the icon was like an Egyptian mummy. And it was basically the beginnings of a Photoshop clone. And I just taught myself from there. Looked at what looked right, what doesn't look right, how to make it better, and taught myself from there. There are a couple of good books. The ones that I mentioned earlier, the Design for Non-Designers. That's a great place to start. Other than that, try getting some free templates and things and reverse engineering them. Which is why I always give you the 6 freebies that are there every week from Creative Market. Because even if it's a PowerPoint file, you can go in and look at how it's put together and get some ideas. You might look at it and think, I think that would look better over there. Then move it. And you learn what looks good and what doesn't look good. I've got there, cheers guys, couple of, and then nothing. Am I a bit missing or are you a bit missing as well, Mike?
I'm a bit missing.
Oh, we're all a bit missing. Peter, you've got us on tenterhooks. What on earth is the end of that sentence? Unless he's been cut off. Well, while you get back and tell us that, we're going to have fruit, aren't we?
Mm.
Joy. Would rather be having something far sexier than that, but never mind. We will have fruit. And then we've got to get up reasonably early in the morning because the dog is going to want walking. She's sleeping like a baby at the moment. But we will be back next week. So where's next week? There's next week. So don't forget next week, Friday night, 9 o'clock, we will have the half-tone. We will have the video of installing the USB hub, and we will have plenty of other things to entertain you. But for this week, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from me.
And we will both see you next time. Good night.